All right, everybody, here we go. Today is a Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. My name is Rob Carter. Welcome to the future, number one radio / podcast in America, Missouri politics today, Isaiah. This is going to be interesting. We have Jen Olson and Ali Grafe on at 9:15. As you may have heard, Donald Trump put out an announcement that he is going to address the nation. It concerns elections. It actually, something that was put out recently mentioned Ali Grafe. Remember, she had standing when she ran for office and sued the Missouri Attorney General's office. I think it was in 2016 or 2020. We have to ask Ali. She actually runs elections and election information for People's Lobby Missouri. She'll be joined by Jen Olson. Jen Olson is running against Kurt Barr in St. Charles County. She believes in hand counting paper ballots. So we're going to have some information about elections at 9:15. Big news coming out from Donald Trump. Maybe we should play that clip first, Isaiah. Let's just remind everybody what we're talking about. Here is Donald Trump. Which one is it? It is number 2. Just play this clip very quickly. This is Donald Trump talking about his address to the nation on Thursday. We have some information about that. Here is what Donald Trump had to say just recently about tomorrow's address.
Around the nation are anticipating your big announcement on Thursday night regarding election machines and integrity. Can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell the
Well,
audience
I'd rather
in
save
America?
it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to
Why
say
should people
also.
watch them?
But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news.
Really big.
It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all over that. I think we have a little bit of an understanding of what they're going to be talking about because of Ali. So we'll talk with Ali and Jen here in just a minute. I agree with Donald Trump. It is the premise of the reason I started the show. One of the main reasons I started the show was elections and COVID and how those two things work together originally. Remember, COVID might have been the reasoning behind the elections of 2020, which were mass mail-in ballots. It was debacle. It was ridiculous. Nobody believes that Joe Biden got 81 million ego votes the way we understand it. So we'll have Ali and Jen on here in just a few minutes. They also are involved in something that happened in St. Charles County, which was there was a video out called "Kurt Cut the Wires." Now, the current election director in St. Charles County is Kurt Olson. Not Kurt Olson. Kurt Olson's another person. I'm putting these two together. Kurt Barr. And Kurt Barr is all about machines. I laugh at sometimes his love affair with the machines, because when you say Kurt, probably get rid of the machine, since Denny Hoskins, the Secretary of State, ran on the idea, and he runs elections in the state of Missouri, supposedly. Secretary of State Denny Hoskins, he ran on the idea of getting rid of all machines, and Kurt Olson said, Rob, you just don't understand. I love the machines. I used to say,
Kurt Olson said that?
No, Kurt Barr probably has posters of the machines on his roof when he goes, or on his ceiling when he goes to bed, just looks up at the machines and goes, I love you guys so much. I love these machines. Will not get rid of them under any circumstance. Fight for that harder than anybody you've ever mentioned. And now, I'll repeat, we can't count votes by hand, Rob. That would take 4 years to count vote by hand. You just can't count votes by hand. You can't do it. It's just impossible. We need the machines. These are crazy people, of course.
Columbia just did it.
That's the argument that people give us. It's let me remind everybody before the show gets too deep in. We're in a hurry today. We have 3 big guests coming on. 4 really. Jen Olson, Ali Grafe, Ray McCarty will be in right around 10 o'clock. We might run a little bit late with Ray McCarty. He is going to talk about, and by the way, let me give you his title. Ray McCarty is the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Missouri. People in Missouri may remember that Senator Joe Nicola put out a video with Ray McCarty in it. They, Republicans, against Amendment 5. And Republican leadership is pushing Amendment 5 very heavily. They are against it. We're going to get, we had Ben Keithley on. So we're going to get the opposition to Ben Keithley, who's pro A5. We're going to get the opposition viewpoint from Ray McCarty at 10 o'clock. And then at 11, Ron Calzone. If you're into Missouri politics, you know who Ron Calzone is. He is the founder of Missouri First Inc. You can check out his work at MO First, FIRST, MoFirst.org. So all Missouri politics, if you're listening from around the country, you go, I don't care about Missouri state politics. I want to remind you, this is happening in your state. It's all the same. It's all nonsense. It's all the same. The federal government bought out the states during COVID. So now the states are addicted to federal money. They can't run the state without the federal money. So now you have states that we used to think were sovereign that really aren't. They need to be. And we're going to try to push the states back into line with the Constitution. But nonetheless, if you're listening from around the country, just superimpose your state for Missouri, and the same things are happening in your state. It is complete and utter nonsense what's happening in our elections. We'll talk about that. You have amendments that are going on. You have all kinds of things going on in your state. And the more you understand about state politics, the better off you're going to be. If you get caught up in Fox News and CNN, as I said yesterday, I would rather, and I mean this sincerely, I would rather my 18-year-old child be watching gay porn than watching CNN and Fox News. At least they know what they're getting with gay porn. With Fox News and CNN, they have no idea that their mind is being rewired to nonsense all day long. They don't understand it. And then they start repeating things that ultimately, if you pay attention, don't make any sense. All right. Isaiah, let me very quickly get a couple of advertisers in because it's going to be a jam-packed show. We got coming in with a lot of information.
Yes.
If you're into Missouri politics, this is your day. So we're going to cut these things up. We'll make videos. And by the way, is it crazy what's going on with our videos around social media, Isaiah? It's just been unbelievable. When we went to DC, I think we had 50 million at one time. I don't know. I keep telling my friends it's up near 100 million views of the USS Liberty conversation with Thomas Massey. Now we're getting traction on Instagram. It's not easy, but we need your help. And I think I got to say thank you to the audience because you're sharing and you're reposting and you're watching the clips and it's beginning to spread. I just ask that if you watch the show, you have to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. It's the only way we beat the algorithms, the things that we talk about, our relationship with Israel, the fraudulent elections. These are the things that the algorithms don't like. So when they hear us talking about it, we move to the bottom of the feed or off your feed. So in order to bypass all of that, you have to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you want to.
Yeah, it's really funny that we do really well on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And now that Larry Ellison owns TikTok, for some reason our videos they don't do too well on TikTok for some reason.
I don't even think you can put them out on TikTok, can you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can. I'm surprised they didn't take that down right away.
Some of them they'll. I won't be surprised if we get some of them taken down. I've had some of my videos taken down in the past for things that I said that were true. They just didn't like what I was saying.
Right. Well, that's, you know what the TikTok is all about. They basically stole TikTok because they did not want you talking ill of Israel. Can't talk bad about Israel, not the people. Isaiah, every day I'm going to make a disclaimer. When we talk about Israel, we're not talking about the Jewish people. No more than if we were talking about Joe Biden, we'd be talking about the American people. We're talking about the leadership of Israel right now is a warmongering operation. May have been that way for a very long time. And the more Americans understand it, the more they might push back against combining our militaries, combining our technology. These things are not good. Carrington Financial, let's start there. We'll get to PLMO later because when we bring in Ali, we'll talk about People's Lobby Missouri a lot today. But we want to start with Carrington Financial. You got to see my man Rick Bavitz yesterday. He's on every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Rick Bavitz, he is your caring advisor, yourcaringadvisor.com. If you're nearing retirement, if you have money to protect, if you have money to grow, I contend that he is the most brilliant mind when it comes to finances in the country. He's brilliant. He understands and he studies it like a wild person. He understands precious metals. He understands crypto. He understands currency. He understands history of money. He's brilliant. And if you have money to protect or grow and you haven't spoke to my man, Rick Bavitz, I just have to ask why. Get a second, get a third, get a fourth, get a fifth opinion. I don't care how many opinions you get. Just get Rick Bavitz's opinion on your money. You can reach him at 314-671. This is a direct line. 314-671-0525. 314-671-0525. Your caring advisor.com. And then we got to go to Grace Hauling because everybody knows my man, Gary Schneider. If you're in St. Charles County, you've seen the trucks and cans and dumpsters all over St. Charles County with the name Grace Hauling on them. Why? Why, Rob? Why does everybody want to do business with Grace Hauling? Well, it's because of Gary Schneider. He's a great guy. He's a standout in the community. He's somebody that you can trust. Grace Hauling prides themselves on outstanding customer service. This is what small businesses do. They have to win with customer service. Don't you want good customer service? Haven't you called up one of these big corporations and you can't get anybody on the line and you feel like you're trapped and they don't care about anything you say or do? That's the corporate world. That's where we're moving if we don't stop it. So I prefer to promote small businesses. Gary Schneider, GraceHauling.com, 2, 4, 6, and 8-yard dumpsters for all commercial customers. If you are a residential customer, trash pickup, recyclables, yard waste, and bulk pickups, it is GraceHauling.com, 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 GraceHauling.com. Outstanding customer service, competitive pricing. It's always GraceHauling.com. Let me get one more in.
I bet Jen and Allie use Grace Hauling. Hopefully.
Of course they do, and they know Gary Schneider, and they like Gary Schneider. I'm sure Gary Schneider has given money to Jen Olson, I would assume. Advanced Wellness MED.com. This is our good friend, Dr. Helen Gelhot. The reason we love Dr. Helen Gelhot, the reason we wanted her as an advertiser, the reason we want her connected to our show is she got out of the hospital administrations. I don't like them. My wife is a nurse. I studied this business up close along with the insurance companies, and I don't like it. I don't like what I see. She says, Rob, in order to give the best care, I have to be able to do what I need to do as a physician. In order to do that outside the guardrails of these hospital administrations is to go solo. I'm going to guess that it cost her a F ton of money. Can I say that? She wouldn't like that I said that, but it cost her a lot of money. She's a very spiritual woman. The big news about AdvancedWellnessMED.com for me is Alzheimer's and dementia. If you have somebody in your family or a friend that is suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, they have symptom reversal at AdvancedWellnessMED.com and Dr. Helen Gelhot. Get to it early. As soon as the mind starts to slip and you feel it going down, or you see it happening to your wife or your husband or your grandparents, you got to get a hold of Dr. Helen Gelhot. Symptom reversal on Alzheimer's and dementia. Dr. Helen Gelhot, you can reach her at 314-576-0094. As she likes to say, feel, think, look better, and live longer. She also has the earliest cancer detection blood test on the market. She has pre-screenings for heart attacks and strokes. Anything that kills you, she specializes in. Dr. Helen Gelhot, 314-576-0094, 314-576-0094, AdvancedWellnessMED.com. All right, let's bring in Jen Olson and Allie Grafe. This should be interesting. I'm anxious to hear what Allie and Jen have to say about Trump's announcement tomorrow evening. Ladies, welcome.
Hi, Rob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Jen, can we hear you? Let me hear Jen real fast. She's staring at me, but not speaking. All right, we'll get Jen on in just a minute. So we'll start with Allie. You might want to send her a text, Isaiah, because obviously.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Okay, now we got you both. And you can hear us?
Yeah.
All right, let's start with Allie. Allie, you sent me some information. You've been on the leading edge of what goes down with elections in the state of Missouri, and you sued the was it the Secretary of State's office?
The Federal Election Assistance Commission, the Secretary of State's office, and St. Charles County Election Director Kerr Barr.
And you have big news because you just found out recently that they're starting to mention your name. You're becoming a whole thing going on with Allie Grafe. It's got to feel good because I know how important it is to you. I know how hard you have fought. I've been side by side with you as I watch this whole thing go down. I know you get very, very animated because you're frustrated with what's going on within the elections. You fought very hard to make changes to them. You've become friends with Jen Olson, who wants hand counting paper ballots. Tell me about the lawsuit, what's going on with it, and what you anticipate to hear from Donald Trump tomorrow when he addresses the nation concerning elections.
So back in March of this year, well, let's rewind just a little bit. I gained standing back in 2022, got on the ballot to gain standing to sue them because Kerr Barr, former Secretary of State Ashcroft, nobody was listening. They would laugh. They'd love to call you names. They would, you're crazy. You're an election denier. You have nothing of substance. There's no proof. I mean, one after the other, excuse after excuse. So I just said, okay, well, I'm going to sue you and let a court decide. Well, in order to do that, I needed to get on the ballot. So I didn't want to actually swim in those swampy waters in Jeff City. I just wanted to gain standing to sue them. So that's what I did. And, you get hurdles and they beat you on procedure. But I have waited a very long time to say that I have been completely vindicated because it was brought to my attention a few days ago that there was a memorandum of understanding that mentioned my name, that they're basically admitting everything that I had in my case 4 years ago was fact. So they
Yeah,
had to change the rules.
right.
So yeah, so what the premise of my whole case was that the laboratory accreditations were not legal. Therefore, anytime you use any machine, any tabulator, anything that these unaccredited laboratories tested and certified for use is invalid. I mean, like, they're invalidating your vote is
Right.
exactly what they were doing.
They set up
So
laws, they don't follow the laws, and then nobody pays attention to the laws that they didn't follow. You sue them for that very reason. And talk to me about that very early on, Ali. You're the one that got me up to speed. I felt something was wrong with the elections. And, being involved in Missouri politics now for the last few years, I recognize that, boy, do they not want to change the election process in the state of Missouri. Holy cow, they fight tooth and nail to keep the
yes,
system
they
as
do.
is, despite the fact that you and I both know they're running illegal elections in the state of Missouri. And I believe that Denny Hoskins admitted that on my radio program. And if you remember, Ali, if you were listening in that day, Jen, if you were listening in, I said, why don't you just stand with the attorney general and say, I cannot certify these elections because they're not being run legally? And if you remember, Denny Hoskins said, Rob, I'm not a grandstander. I really need the legislators to pass legislation in order for me to do anything. And they didn't do anything for him. So a guy that runs on getting rid of electronic voting systems in the state of Missouri, that's what he runs for. And that's what the Secretary of State does, is oversee elections. He runs on that premise, wins, and then the Republican Party says, well, we really don't care on that idea. I mean, who cares?
Mm.
They just completely ignored him. Carry on. I just want to make sure people understand where you're coming from, because you and I know the background. Not everybody does.
Right. Well, and so I filed several lawsuits. So I was hitting them, one after the other. The first one was a federal court case in the Eastern District of Missouri. And then the second one was a county contestation against Barr and Ashcroft. So I wanted to nail, because the EAC is essentially the ones that have committed the fraud. They are the ones. And after Ashcroft and Barr and everybody else knew, including all of the legislators, and I'm going to start naming names. So if you ignored me and you ignored this evidence, your name's getting out there before the election. And if you're up for election, I hope the people fire you, because these people have ignored this evidence, and it's coming out now that we were right the whole time. And so what happened in that court case was they just dismissed it procedurally. Like, it was it didn't have merit, and it didn't, there was no injury. Basically it was just like, you can't do this. They didn't hear any of it. So fast forward, now again, it's on the laboratory accreditations, the signature. So the signature on the laboratory accreditations, in order for Missouri, so in order for the Secretary of State, so the former Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, the current Secretary of State, Denny Hoskins, in order for them to approve these machines for use, they have to adhere and conform to the voting system standards. And one of the voting system standards that they wrote, the EAC wrote, is that the chair of the commission, the EAC commission, shall sign the certificate of accreditation. And none of them have. None of them have been signed. So I've been screaming, why is this is a fraudulent certificate? And I bring it back to my job as a real estate agent all the time. Like, if I'm sitting at that closing table and anybody else besides the signing authority has signed that, it's fraudulent. So we're running fraudulent elections, and they're invalidating. I don't care if you vote for Kermit the Frog. They're invalidating your vote, and it has to be fixed. If we're a republic, if we can keep it, right, we have to abide by rules of law. and we don't get to cherry pick. And that is a congressionally passed act that we don't get to cherry pick those laws, that those have to be followed. So when people say, oh, hand counting is going to take much longer and it's, there's more errors, it's like, listen, folks, it's the law. It's written in the Missouri law too. So back in 2023 with HB 511, they made the official ballot of Missouri the paper ballot, period. So the laws that govern paper ballots have to be adhered to.
Can I just
govern that?
Because you got a little bit of feedback coming through, so I just want to say this very clearly so people understand it. So long as we have paper ballot as the official ballot in the state of Missouri, it wasn't that way. It changed. Once the paper ballot became the official ballot, has to be a paper ballot, the official ballot in the state of Missouri, the law switched back to hand counting paper ballots. They go hand in hand with one another, no pun intended. So once we go to paper ballot, they shall be counted by hand. And Missouri doesn't even recognize it. They don't even pay attention to it. You can bring it to every single person's attention. They ignore you. They call you a conspiracy theorist. They say that there's no way we can count votes by hand. And it's maddening and frustrating because you're like, well, I got to follow the law. Why don't you have to follow the law? We don't have trust in elections. I mean, there's millions of people around the country and a lot of people in the state of Missouri who just do not trust the government to count votes through electronic voting systems. They don't trust it primarily because Donald Trump, everybody watched it in 2020. They did not believe the election outcome in 2020. They did not believe that Joe Biden, who was giving campaign speeches wearing masks while his adoring fans sat in circles and they honked horns on the applause lines. They just didn't believe that maniac got 81 million votes. They just don't believe it. Donald Trump said so. His legal team said so. Jenna Ellis and Rudy Giuliani. And yet here we are as Republicans in an all red state saying, wait a minute, just go by what Donald Trump said. Just follow your leader. And they all ignore you. It's depressing at some point. I want to bring in Jen real fast, Jen, because I want to play a clip for you both. And then I want to get your take on it, Jen. So just recently, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social a clip. And the clip starts with a guy named Clay Parikh. And you guys may remember, wasn't Clay Parikh involved in speaking to Kurt Barr, who is the election director in St. Charles County right now? Didn't everybody try to say, you know what? Let's bring in Mike Lindell. Let's bring in Clay Parikh. Let's bring in some election experts. Let's have them talk to Kurt Barr. Let's just walk him through the process. Surely when he understands that the elections can be manipulated through electronic voting systems, he's going to want to make a change. As I understand it from everybody involved, he was very arrogant about it. He wanted nothing to do with it. In fact, Mike Lindell sent him a machine because he was going to show how the machines could be manipulated. And as I understand it from Mike Lindell, who I just watched speak at the Osage County, it was a Republican committee meeting of some sort. He said that he sent it to Kurt Barr, and he didn't even open it and just sent it back. So there's no desire to recognize where we're coming from St. Charles County election director Kurt Barr, and that maddens me. It just makes me crazy because, as Donald Trump said in the first clip that we played, without fair and free elections, we don't have a country. We don't have a country. And why are the people in St. Charles County, why is Kurt Barr not more concerned like we are? We're not asking him to solve cancer. We're just saying, wait a minute, get rid of the machines, count them by hand. It's relatively simple. This would bring back confidence for a lot of people that vote in the elections, or, there's a lot of people that don't vote in the elections because they don't believe they're real. And you have to understand that. You have to bring back the confidence, and I don't get it. But Donald Trump, this is my main point. Sorry, ladies. Clay Parikh was just posted in a Truth Social post by Donald Trump. Clay Parikh. Clay Parikh came in to St. Charles County to speak directly to Kurt Barr. Kurt Barr ignored him, and here is Donald Trump posting information from Clay Parikh. So just put that all in your head, and here's the clip that Donald Trump just put out on Truth Social. It is clip number 1. Isaiah, check this out.
Exactly. There were several states involved.
And which time period are you referring to?
This was 2020.
Before or after the election?
During the election.
In your examination of any of these Dominion systems, have you seen any indication of non-election personnel remotely accessing a Dominion system?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
I too have reviewed a series of emails produced by Dominion, in which they're discussing remoting into Gwinnett County, Georgia.
You also mentioned Dominion remotely connecting to election systems, but you don't have any evidence that occurred in Georgia, correct?
There was one county. I've seen a lot of Dominion emails. I've had to translate Dominion emails from Serbian to English to verify the technical questions I was being asked about them, to verify that it was translated properly. So
it's your testimony that there is evidence of Dominion remotely accessing Georgia election equipment?
yes, on the one county. It was included with stuff that I was researching and reading through, considering Colorado. Michigan was also involved, and there were other ones.
To your understanding, is Dominion able to remotely connect to these election systems?
Yes,
Are they able to do that without detection?
yes,
And are you aware of any instances in which that has occurred?
yes.
Can you identify those instances?
One would be the Denver, Colorado server was granted, or requested to grant Belgrade, only Belgrade. I did search. There is a Belgrade, Montana. Again, why would Montana need to connect into a Colorado file transfer server as part of the election system? And there are other components and things that were done in the background concerning the database and the configure of the database server that still do not have an engineering change order. Because as somebody who works in an operational environments for a lot of different things, what I will tell you is sometimes things break or you have a problem and you have to fix it. And you submit a change request, or in this case, an engineering change order that's retroactive, right? You want to go back and make sure that you record the process so that you have change management and integrity of the system. If you do not record changes, you lead yourself down a very bad
road is how he finished. Jen Olson, I know this is a big issue for you. You fought very hard. You got recruited to run for St. Charles County election director. Does that ring true to you? When you look at that, do you go, wait a minute, I'm not sure I have the scientific expertise to make these claims, but I don't have trust in the electronic voting system. And I understand that if I don't have confidence in the voting systems, then I'm really in a bad situation here in America based on a constitutional republic framework. So I'm going to run. I'm going to get back to hand counting paper ballots so people have confidence in the elections. When you see that and you know that that very guy, Clay Perico, is shown on that video produced by Donald Trump, does it give you some validation that Kurt Barr just ignored everything that everybody was trying to get across to him, including Mike Lindell, including Clay Perico, including just about everybody that watched the elections go down in 2020? Does it give you some kind of vindication that, hey, these people were right on the same page with me from the very beginning?
It does. More importantly, it just exposes that I don't know that Kurt really even cares. I think he's more concerned with pleasing the vendors and, than he is being answerable to the people. And listening to Clay and the other gentleman that was speaking, it's something that we can all agree on both sides of the aisle, I hope, is that it should not take a rocket scientist. It shouldn't take a IT expert or somebody who's been at the highest levels of national security like Clay has to determine how these elections are being ran, what the algorithms are, what the code is in the background, all this other, it's all foreign to me and to most Americans. What you can understand is 1, 2, 3, 4, somebody's name. Like you can understand the hand count of a ballot. That system is not rocket science. So I think that's the most glaring thing for me in all of this is why have we overcomplicated things so bad to where the average person doesn't understand what's going on?
Yeah, that's been my argument. Yeah, that's been my argument. I've said, if you can't understand elections, then we got a real problem, because you should be able to explain elections, because it's just a vote and a count. But they've made them so complicated right now that nobody understands what's going on with the elections. If you tell them, hey, listen, we should pay attention to these elections because we got some malfeasance going on, they just look like you're a unicorn. They just can't see it, don't understand it. And I think, wow, just make it nice and easy so everybody can understand, but they don't want to do it for some reason.
And I'm pretty sure the reason that Kurt never used the machine that Mike Lindell sent him, I'm pretty sure the reason he gave was that he didn't want to upset the vendor. by opening up their machine.
So what is the love affair with the vendors, do you think? Is there money associated with that? Why would you want to protect vendors? Just explain to me what you think could, I don't want you to make any accusations that you can't prove, but what is your gut feeling as to why anybody who's running elections and has a responsibility to the people that vote to get it accurate, why would they be more interested in what the vendors think?
Look what Dominion did to all the people who spoke out against them. Anybody who had any amount of power back then, look what they did to them. They tried to destroy them. And not only that, in the state of Missouri, you have to go to an annual training as a county clerk or a director of elections or somebody on an elections board. You have to go to an annual training. And all of those things are ran by, sponsored by the machines, the vendors of the election systems. They wine and dine the clerks. They take them on golf outings. They feed them filet mignon and top dollar liquor and all this other stuff. It's all just, I don't have any good words for it that are appropriate. Yeah, it is. And it has to stop. We're not answerable to vendors that we pay to help us with our elections or help us with our government in any way. We're answerable to the people.
What kind of response are you getting from, I know you guys have been knocking on doors, you're working really hard. What kind of response are you getting from the general public out in St. Charles County as you talk to them about hand counting paper ballots? What kind of response are you getting?
People are ecstatic. I think this is something that people have been waiting for a long time. And it's not one side of the aisle. I can't tell you how many driveways I've stood in speaking with Democrats, and they're blown away by the things that I'm telling them. Lack of transparency, lack of accountability. They do have questions on, well, how's it going to work and how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost? And we walk through those things and they see that this is likely going to be in their minds the best way to do this. If we want to take our country back, if we want to take our elections back and have control over our government the way it was supposed to be from the beginning. That's what our founders intended. We are supposed to be in charge, not a vendor. Or a foreign-owned billionaire, us, the American people.
For 200 years, we counted votes by hand.
Yep.
And now when you talk to people, and I see it online because, you know, I'm an advocate for what you're trying to get accomplished. I see people respond to me all the time saying, oh, yeah, we're going to take 4 weeks to count votes by hand. You know, we can do it so much faster with machines. And this is what I get all the time. And I just want to, it's so unbelievable to me that you can brainwash the citizenry into the idea that you cannot count votes by hand. And one of them that I was arguing with, you know, said, you know, if you wait till the end of the poll, when the polls close, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, depending on where you're at, when the polls close, just imagine how long it's going to take them by hand. Well, that's not the law. Nope. The law says you can start counting them. How quickly, Jen? How quickly can you start counting votes by hand by Missouri law?
I believe it's an hour after the polls open or when there's at least 50 ballots in the ballot box so that there's still anonymity of the ballots being cast.
So it's right away. So you can count them just like we used to.
Right away.
Yep.
Allie, what do you think Donald Trump is going to talk about on tomorrow night? So tomorrow night, he's going to address the nation. He's got really, really big news, like Ed Sullivan used to say, really, really big news about the elections. What do you think he's going to talk about tomorrow? Based on the post I saw.
I definitely think it has something to do with the machines. I want to kind of get back to that EAC thing because that's big news that we need to cover, because I think that has to do with what Trump is going to discuss, because I think there's a lot of things that we miss jumping from that to that. The EAC came out and had said back in March that they needed to change those rules that I was referring to in my case 4 years ago. So they had to change the rules. And that was what that memorandum was to change that 3.6.1 to basically state that they could subdelegate that duty of that signature to the janitor if they wanted to. So the janitor could sign it. And what happened right in that time, so right before that memorandum came out, one of the Chairman Palmer, suddenly and unexpectedly quit. Now, also, that was about 30 days after Senator Ben Brown had cornered him at a event and said, hey, we spoke 6 months ago. You said you were going to look into this signature thing. what is happening? He hawed around and, he skirted out of it. And then 30 days later, he quits. Well, then this memorandum comes out, and 90 days from that, Trump has fired them all. So there is no EAC right now. As of today, he has dismantled that EAC. So them, they're that memorandum that had my name, referred to my case, was basically retroactively exonerating their crimes. And that's a big deal. I think that that's why they don't have their jobs today. I mean, I'm sure there's more in that, but this is a lot of it. And Isaiah, if you bring up that,
do you think it's a good thing that he fired everybody? Because you're saying, because I'm kind of confused. So explain this to me. So you're saying they basically retroactively dismissed a crime, and at the same time he fired everybody that was involved. So how's it going to work out in your mind?
Well, listen, what we've been fighting is to dismantle the EAC because they're a bunch of frauds.
Okay.
And that is exactly what my president did. He dismantled them. And it came on the heels of this memorandum. And so, and understand what that memorandum states. It states, hey, we understand there was confusion and we were operating under the understanding that if you scroll down, you can see my name is
say my name. There it is.
There's grapes, yeah. And then the next paragraph, it says, if you keep scrolling down, this is where it says the EAC has not formally issued a NOC, which is a notice of clarification to address the public confusion, right? However, in that wake, we're going to change 3.6.1 so that anybody can sign that accreditation, right? That is a total admittance. They totally admitted that the past, all of those accreditations were invalid. So, I mean, that was huge when I saw that. Like that.
But it invalidated elections, though, Ali, because that's really the big problem that everybody seems to see within the Republican Party is if you acknowledge this, it basically discredits the elections prior, and nobody wants to do that, especially people in office now.
I mean, that's what it is. And so when people ask why haven't they, why hasn't the AG got, come down on these crimes? And it's like, well, because she ain't going to have a job either. Her name's on the line too. So none of these people want to admit there's this massive problem. But for instance, and I use this example, there was a judge in like a DUI. If you get a DUI, your attorney is going to immediately check the certificate of the intoxilator.
Right. You took a breathalyzer. They're going to check. Yeah, they're going to check the information.
They're going to check to make sure that breathalyzer has all the certifications, that there's no chink in the armor, because if there is, then those results are not admissible in a court. And so what a judge did in New Jersey is they had to throw out like 50,000 DUI cases because they found that one of the intoxilizer machines was not certified. So again, it's the same principle in accreditation in laboratories, because the laboratories that test our machines. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. So it does invalidate them. There's precedent that says it invalidates them. A court of law says it invalidates them. That's why nobody wants to take this on. So I think
I want to ask one question. I just want you to answer this because I think if I'm in the audience, I know what you're going to say because we've talked many times. But the audience might be asking, why is this so important? Is this a technical issue? And this is the way I understand it. Tell me if I'm right. If there's only 2 laboratories that test the systems that are accredited, that means the 2 laboratories would be able to find any malfeasance within the software. If those 2 accredited laboratories don't test the machinery, then what they're trying to say is there could be malfeasance within the electronic voting systems that you're not catching because they're not being accredited by the laboratories that we trust. Is that basically it in a nutshell?
So yes, and I will say that Clay Parikh amazing man, helped us tremendously during this lawsuit, gave us a lot of the technical information that we needed. And it's the fact that there are certain things that have to be tested in the process of testing. And if those aren't in there, then that certificate of accreditation cannot be granted. And if those aren't being tested, and those, even if it's one little line they don't put in there, that I mean, they can't sign that. It's not accredited. So I think they're skipping steps. I don't think they're not testing. I think there's certain things they aren't testing. I think they're testing some of it. But the problem is when you're not accredited, why don't we just send our electronic voting machines to Walmart and just let them test them? I mean, it's the same thing. It's not an authorized, accredited laboratory. It has to be per HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, the congressionally passed act. It has to be a federally accredited laboratory. And in order to be a federally accredited laboratory, they have to have a valid certificate of accreditation. And none of them have that. So that's what they went back to go retroactively excuse their crimes 4 years later and change that 3.6.1 that states that the chair must sign the certificate of accreditation. They went and changed it. So it is vindicated. And Kurt Barr called us crazy. Mike Coslow, he's chirping all the time. You don't know what you're talking about. It's
House
like,
Rep from O'Fallon, Missouri, for people. Yeah, House Rep from Missouri, from O'Fallon, Missouri, is Mike Coslow.
Tom Estes, all these people. I'm going to start naming names because these people have just been.
Senator Rick Bratton is Tom Estes. He's the one that said we will never count paper ballots by hand, period.
Never.
And I thought that was interesting from the chief of staff. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that's kind of an interesting thing to say because you're basically speaking for Senator Rick Bratton, who's speaking for the Republican Party in many ways. And, the president is the leader of the party, and he says we got a problem.
So to get back to your original question, I think that Trump is going to hit on the EAC. I think the fraudulent agency that has been, and how maybe that ties into any foreign involvement. I think we know from the intensive research that we've done with not only with Clay Parikh, but many of these experts that were testifying in 2020, we have their affidavits, we've spoken to them, and we understand there is definitely foreign interference, without a doubt. But where the U.S. comes in, and which is where, you have said many times, the U.S. has allowed that, right? There's been aspects within, and I think it's the EAC. I think it's, different. I'm not sure how the wheels are turning, but I can tell you that laws aren't being followed. And so that is the big thing. I think that Trump is going to come out, and I have waited a very long time, and I do hope that it is as big as he says it is. So
Yes.
we're super excited, and it couldn't come at a better time because we have been fighting this exact thing, and our names have been smeared, election deniers, so this is vindication for many of us. And I hope that people see that Jen Olson had taken my lawsuit and the facts in the lawsuit and putting it into real life practice so that she can get in and fix them and make our elections legal again.
Outstanding. Well, congratulations to you. I know it's a very big, you and I've talked a long time. We fight about many things, Ali, you and I do. You're like my sister. We fight all the time. But when it comes to the elections, I think you've been right on the money. I think you're out there in the front. I think that you have taken all the darts and all of the arrows and all the she's crazy and she's this and she's that. And I think, right there in writing, you can see that you had it right all along. And I don't understand why, what People's Lobby Missouri does. I said, we're not going to run a commercial for People's Lobby Missouri today because we're going to talk about it. What People's Lobby Missouri does is we're not buddy with the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. We just don't come from that angle. It doesn't mean we don't have friends in the Republican Party. It doesn't mean we don't like people in the both Democrat and Republican Party. It means that we are trying to be objective, and we try to get things done for the people of Missouri. And we concentrate on just a few topics. One of them is elections. Another is accountability. And the third is taxes. If you're being taxed by a government that isn't really elected legally, and there's no accountability for that, then you really don't have a system that you can trust, right? They all kind of tie together. And I'm just glad that you're finally seeing your name in print. You're finally starting to get the accolades for all the trouble that you went through. And I know that Jen Olson is on the same page. And I really want to just kind of turn to Jen for just a minute, Jen, because I'd love to see you win this. I'd love to see you win this out in St. Charles County. I've only endorsed 2 people in 5 years. So on podcast and radio, back to podcast, I've only endorsed 2 people. One was Denny Hoskins because he said he was going to get rid of the machines. And 2 is Jen Olson because she said she wants to get rid of the machines and go to hand counting paper ballot. And I'll just speak for myself here because we're kind of in the same game together here. I just believe that you can't possibly have a forward-looking country when half of the nation doesn't believe the elections are ran legitimately. I just don't think you can ever move forward doing that. So you've got to get that out of the way. You have to get back to elections that people understand and can have confidence in. And I think that's what you're trying to do, Jen. Money coming in. Do you think financially you can put up a good fight in the primaries against Kurt Barr? How do you feel about it? What is your situation right now? You're smiling, so hopefully you're in a good situation. But what is your take on a legitimate chance to win this election?
We have absolutely out fundraised our opponent. However, that being said, elections cost an arm and a leg and a firstborn child. And there's always last minute stuff that has to be done, like mailers and text messages and ads and stuff like that, that we could really use to get a one up on him because he is the incumbent. He's got the name recognition. He's using, in my opinion, he's using taxpayer funds right now to bolster his campaign by running ads as the director of elections, informational ads on how can you vote, and you know, we're having this ice cream social and all this other stuff. He hasn't tried this hard ever to get any information out to the public, let alone, you know, put his face in front of a camera and start talking to people. So that's something he has that we don't. That's a resource he has that we don't. And so yeah, I mean, funds are good. However, we could always use more. And you can find information on how to donate on my website, olsonforthepeople.com. Up there at the top, there's a red donate button. It's my favorite button on there. A lot of our stuff is grassroots. We are a grassroots movement. We don't have big donors. Kurt just got a $20,000 infusion from the sitting county executive. I think that's fishy. I think that's inappropriate.
Speaking of fishy, I want to get your comment on this because this is when I started to get a little bit more emotionally invested in what was going on in St. Charles County because I went to this meeting. So Kurt Barr's wife, and listen, I don't know Kurt Barr's wife. She could be wonderful. I have no idea. Kurt Barr's wife runs in an election. Let me lay this out. You might want to clip this, Isaiah, so we can clip this and get this out. You guys can use this for your campaign because this drove me crazy. So Kurt Barr is the election director of St. Charles County. In the recent elections where Bill Eigel was running for governor and Kurt Barr was running the elections, St. Charles County was dead last in getting the election results in. In that election, his wife was running for a position. She wins by 1 vote. So you have all these questions about electronic voting systems. The elections have been under scrutiny and controversy in St. Charles County for quite some time. His wife runs an election. She wins by 1 vote. Last to get their vote totals in. And he sees no problem with that. He doesn't even show up for the meeting afterwards where I was there. I watched the whole thing. And I thought, well, this is kind of odd. You got this controversy going on with the elections. The election director who's counting the votes has his wife run an election. She wins by 1 vote. People are like, wait a minute, that sounds a little fishy. They show up to a committee meeting that he doesn't even show up for to explain himself. He doesn't say, you know what, that is a little bit fishy. Let's do a hand count. I mean, good Lord. I mean, it's my wife. She wins by 1 vote, just for appearances, we'll do a hand count. Nothing. And I just asked people of St. Charles County, what in the world? I mean, I'm just saying as a decent person, forget the election. We're talking about, what, a couple 300 votes they would have had to count. I could have done it in 20 minutes by myself, but they didn't want to do it for some reason. And to this day, I don't understand it. And I don't understand why the people of St. Charles County aren't more frustrated with that. I would think just for appearances alone, just for decency, you'd say, I see what people are thinking. Let me just count these votes by hand. Let's get a hard ballot. Let's bring it out. Let's count them by hand. Didn't even show up for the committee hearing. I still don't understand it. What's your take on all that?
Yeah. And not only that, but Kurt wasn't running. Kurt wasn't on the ballot in 2024 in the August primary. His wife was. However, he put all of his Kurt Barr yard signs out at the polling locations in her Central Committee Township. So he was, by all intents and purposes, electioneering using his name recognition for his wife to win the election instead of going out and buying yard signs with his wife's name on them. He can't. Neither one of them can possibly expect the public to see past the one vote victory here, especially with the absolute lack of care and transparency. And like you said, hand count the entire race, shove it in our faces and prove us wrong. That's what we want. But none of that was even done. And had they done that, we wouldn't still be talking about this 2 years later.
You have a video. Did we get that video to you, Isaiah, where Jen, there was a video of you guys at one of these committee hearings? And I'm a little frustrated with St. Charles. We have some people on there that we like, but the St. Charles, what is it? St. Charles Committee? Is that what it is? St. Charles County Committee? Is that what it's called?
Are you talking about
with Joe Brazel?
County Council.
County Council. Very frustrating when you go to see them. When we were talking about the elections, one of the guys, Mike Elam, who I don't know very well, but man, oh man, we're kind of going through the information about the elections. He actually turned his back on the presentation, just turned away from us. And I keep thinking to myself, how do these people get elected? Is it just the fact that St. Charles County, the people that are voting, have no idea about any of this information, so they know they can get away with it? But when somebody's putting on a presentation contesting elections and one of the council members turns his back on the presentation, I think to myself, wait a minute, who are you here to represent? What are you doing? I just couldn't understand it. It so frustrated me. I blew up on the radio the very next day, and everybody thinks I'm crazy because of it. But it's just the arrogance of these people that are supposed to be serving the public blows my mind, and nothing ever happens to these people. It seems like they skate right past it. Everybody applauds when they come in the room. Oh yeah, I like this guy and I like that guy. I'm like, what? How do you think they get away with it? Is it just a lack of understanding because this is local politics? A lot of people don't even know that it goes on. They don't even know that we have a council. They don't know anything about it. So these people are able to do whatever they want, get away with it, run their elections, get money from the Republican Party to run their commercials. Everybody goes, oh, yeah, I like him. My kids go to school with him and they vote for them. Is that the way they get away with this? Because I think if the public understood and they got to watch what happened like I did, they would vote every single one of them out of there, maybe except for Joe. They get rid of all of them. But nothing ever happens. They just skate.
Tim Baker's been pretty solid too. So there's two of them on there. And so that's important. That's another important thing. We're trying to unseat those members too. So we have Judy Gambino and Annette Seavey running against two of the incumbents that have ignored us. So we are really pushing as a slate in St. Charles to get this changed so that we can make the changes and have a county council and a election and a executive that all work together for the betterment of the people. I want to touch base real quick on what you were talking about with Kurt Barr and his wife. I believe that, and I think this also ties in with what's going to happen on Thursday. Isaiah, I had sent you the last link. It was a picture of what President Trump had said. And this is a quote from the Epoch Times, and he had said that he is going to remove anyone that gets in the way or stands in the way of counting every legal vote. That is so important because what People's Lobby showed in Franklin County is that not all legal votes are being counted when using the tabulator. So if Kurt Barr decided to count every legal vote, there were a lot of undervotes in that race, a lot that he could have counted and he didn't, so would have made a difference in a one count race. So I believe that is going to be something also, that it is counting every legal vote. A voter intent mark is a legal vote that the tabulator does not have the capabilities of reading. So hopefully Kurt Barr is on Trump's list to remove too.
Let me summarize that.
We could get a Jen Olson.
Yeah,
if Isaiah puts it up there, you can see that where he says that, because he says he's going to remove them.
Let me summarize, because I don't know. I don't see Isaiah. He's probably getting everybody ready because we had a couple interviews coming up. But let me summarize that for people. We had an event that Ali wanted to put on at Moe's Pizza, a landmark in Washington, Missouri. We put on a presentation there because Ali wanted to prove that voter intent cannot be determined by tabulators, which, as she describes, for example, when you go in to vote and you're supposed to color in the oval. Well, there are people that just don't read well. They're older. Maybe they have dyslexia. They can't read the instructions, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but they're still citizens that get to vote. If they circle the oval or they put an X through the oval, by Missouri statute and by Missouri law, that is a legal vote. However, if they decide that they want to vote by putting an X through every one of the people that they choose in the election, so you get the ballot, instead of coloring in the oval, maybe they can't read. Maybe they just can't read very well, what have you. And they put an X through the oval, Missouri statute says that is a legal vote. However, if you put it through the tabulator, it doesn't recognize it, and it's an undervote. That is what she proved was happening at Moe's Pizza. Nothing changes.
Without any notification.
No
That
notification.
machine
They kept saying they would go into a pile and they'd count them by hand. That didn't happen.
Nope.
And we proved that out at Moe's Pizza. You know, thanks to Moe's Pizza for putting that event on. But we proved that in that presentation. And you think that would be enough to catch some people's attention. And what you described is perfect. So if somebody, let's say 2 people, put an X through the ballot, they weren't counted because the machine didn't pick them up, the tabulators didn't pick them up, then it would change the outcome of an election that the election director's wife
with 1 vote
was in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, these things happen all around the country. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to notice, and nobody seems to care. But it is our elections. And if you want to stay free, you might want to pay attention to your elections, because and you said, we were talking about who could possibly be involved in the manipulation of elections. Well, theoretically, it could be our intel services, global intel services. So it could come from China. It could come from Serbia. It could come from Venezuela. But we think of the United States intelligence operation as being confined within the United States. Well, that's not true right now, because they're trying to pass legislation that would share technology with Israel. That's just one country. So you already know where their thought process is at.
Yeah,
So if they're doing this behind the scenes, you could have an intelligence agency that determines the outcome of elections, puts their puppets in charge of our system, and then they're going to move it whatever direction they want to, and you'll have no understanding of it because nobody in our government will do anything about it, and it's very frustrating. Hopefully Donald Trump will do something about it, and we'll learn more about what's going on in our elections tomorrow night as Donald Trump addresses the nation. Anything else, ladies? Because we've got somebody on deck.
Nope. That's about it. Count all legal votes by hand. And that's what we have to do because it's the law.
Yep. Come on out on August 4th
and show up in mass so that we can take our county back.
Too big to rig?
If the dream team takes, the wins in August, the people of St. Charles County get their county back. And that dream team is Bill Eigel, Jen Olson, Annette Seavey, and Judy Gambino.
Amen. All right, ladies. Good luck, Jen. Very good luck to you. I think your campaign.
And also just to add in, who do you want running your elections, St. Charles? Do you want the people that have been fighting for 6 years to get the legal way out? Or do you want the guy that has been obfuscating and neglecting the law and calling everybody crazy doing it? So it's your choice. Fire them August 4th.
Amen. I think the slogan should be too big to rig. I've heard that somewhere and it worked once before. I think we should try it again. Too big to rig. Jen Olson, St. Charles County Election Director. Ladies, thanks for all the hard work. I know how hard you've worked at it. I appreciate it very much. We'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
See you, Allie. All right, Isaiah. Boy, I hope Jen wins that election. I would love to see hand counting paper ballots begin to spread across the country. I think it's necessary. Not that it's the easiest and the fastest or whatever people call it, but it's necessary when there is a lack of confidence in elections. You have to have somebody that cares about elections, that puts a process in place that everybody can understand, brings back confidence, and all of a sudden you got people.
I was actually researching because I was curious. I remember us looking into voting machines. You remember when did the voting machines originate? And it started with in 1892. They had lever voting machines, I guess, that would count the ballots, right? But it was a manual hand crank, right? So it's more manual. And then guess what? In the 1960s, Rob, everything for some reason is happening in the 1960s.
I got a great one for you. You want to hear a funny story about that?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
1960s.
That's when the voting machine started, was the 1960s. So,
I might find this clip and replay it for you. So I did when I used to do my original podcast, and I can't remember when I did this one, but I did a podcast and I was talking about elections, and we were talking about assassinations and put them together. So the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. Okay, everybody remember the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. If you're old enough to remember that, great. If you don't, you certainly know the story. So that night, he had just won a big primary race in California, and they were very excited. So he gets shot, murdered, assassinated. And then you go to the news clipping right after he gets assassinated, and they're talking about the elections. And they say that the elections have been stalled due to electronic voting systems that had a malfunction. That was on the news in I think he was assassinated in 1968. That was on the news in 1968. And what happened in 1963 on November 22nd? That was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And if you listen to Ron Paul, he said that is when the erosion of our constitutional rights really began to speed up. So whoever was responsible for the assassination of John F. Kennedy, whoever that was, there's many different reasons and many different reasons to believe many different theories. He says that's when the problems began. And then right after that, you have his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, assassinated at the same time the electronic voting systems are starting to take shape. And I had a video of a news report out of Los Angeles that said there was a malfunction in the machinery and the election results would take a little bit more time. Isaiah, all the way back to the 1960s. All right, let's do some advertise it. Make sure we take care of our advertisers. Make sure that everybody is paying attention to our advertisers because that is very important. Let's do ECS Roofing. I saw that he was in here. He's probably putting on a new roof right now somewhere, but he was in the chat earlier.
Actually, after the storms here in Missouri, I think you came
Go
right
on.
after the flooding and everything. And in southern Missouri, we got people that here in my community, we gathered a bunch of donations, and they're driving it down to southern Missouri to help out down there with all the flooding. So
outstanding.
Hopefully he got some roofs from the storm. I know it's kind of a morbid way to look at that, right? But
yeah, of course, we tease when we say that. We say we're doing
an opportunity for him. There's always an opportunity in chaos, right?
Yeah, we always say it's kind of tongue in cheek when we say we're doing the rain hail dance, but if you're in the roofing business, your livelihood kind of depends on roofs being destroyed. So it is what it is. ECS Roofing. This is Larry Evans again. He is our general contractor for the show. If you are somebody who is in need of a new roof or knows somebody that is in need of a new roof, the best advertising in the world, Isaiah, is word of mouth advertising. If I tell my neighbor, hey, I heard about this guy named Larry Evans. He runs ECS Roofing. He's been around for 30 years. If you need a new roof, you should call him. Word of mouth advertising is the best advertising the world has ever known. It is the very best. When somebody you love or somebody that you know or somebody in your circles recommends somebody, that is the best advertising there is. So what we say is if you're in the family, if you're here on the show daily and you have somebody in your family or somebody close to you, a friend, maybe even yourself who needs a new roof, you have to remember the name ECS Roofing. Roofing, sidings, decks, gutters, garage doors, custom exterior metal, residential or commercial, new construction, storm damage, free licensed inspections. And he is an independent insurance adjuster. And as he says, Rob, the game in roofing, if you don't know the game is every time there's a storm, somebody's going to knock on your door, say there's a problem with your roof. We're going to work with the insurance companies to fix your roof. He said that is a scam. 99.9% of the time, they have no idea whether the insurance companies are going to work with you at all. They have no idea whether it was caused by the storm. He does. He knows what's going on. So when he says the insurance companies are going to work with you, he knows what he's talking about. I highly recommend that when it's time for a new roof, it is ECS Roofing and Exteriors. You can check them out on Facebook, or you can reach out to them at 314-486-3567. 314-486-3567. Remember, got to put a jingle together. ECS Roofing and Exteriors. ECS Roofing and Exteriors when it's time for a new roof. It is Larry Evans and ECS Roofing and Exteriors. One more time with phone number 314-486-3567. And then we have Rocket, ROCKIT careers.com. This is a nationwide business. So if you're listening from anywhere in the country, if you're a small to medium-sized business and you have a human resources department that doesn't get the job done for you, they don't put good workers in front of you, good candidates in front of you, and or you just don't have a human resources department because you're not quite big enough, you can't really afford it, and you need help finding good workers, good candidates to enter your business, you have to lean on Rocket, ROCKIT careers.com. As I've said, I've known these guys for a long time, known Mitch since I was in high school. They love helping you. You're dealing with a big business that's a small business, and they will take care of you. All you got to say is, Rob sent me, and you're going to get service like you've never seen before. If you're out of work, if you hate your job, if you just can't take another day of it, but you got to feed the kids, you got to feed the family, Launch a new career with Rocket, Rockit careers.com. My good friends, Mitch and Brian, they will take care of you. So if you're an employer or an employee, doesn't matter. When it's time for a new job or time for new employees, it is always rocketcareers.com, Rockit careers.com. You can reach them out. Let me get that number out. I didn't give the number out. 636-778-2419. 636-778-2419. The easiest way to remember these guys is Rocket, Rockit careers.com. Let's get Jones Water in there. I'm going to see Jones Water, I think on Saturday or Sunday. He invited me out to some kind of get together. This is the guy that has been with me from the very beginning. So when it's time to get your health in order, you must have clean air and fresh water. Period. He always says, Rob, you get those little skin irritations, you get your sinus problems, this and that and the other. He goes, it's just stale air in your home. If you're in that environment, and especially when you get older and ailments start to pile up on top of one another, you got to have clean air and you got to have fresh water. And I always say, in the year 2026, if you're drinking tap water, understanding what's in that water. Hey, we had a guy on yesterday that said they got brown water in Texas. These people are showering with water that's discolored because the water is not as safe as you'd like to think. Sometimes it looks pretty when it comes out of the faucet, but let it sit there and then put a water filtration in by joneswater.com and watch the difference in the water. You'll see it. You can see the clean, fresh water tastes different. You feel safer in it. You want to clean your clothes with it. You want to bathe in it. It's completely different than tap water. So if you care about your home, if you care about your family, it is joneswater.com. You'll be the filter or you'll buy the filter. He has an event going on for 2 systems, $250 off. I got to get that back to you, Isaiah. He's going to get mad at me. I got to get this back to you so that we can put it on the screen. But it's a $250 discount. He said, Rob, for anybody that calls in from the show, we'll give them a $250 discount on these 2 other services. I can't remember.
During the month of July only.
During the month of July only. Joneswater.com, 636-899-1040, 636-899-1040. You'll be the filter or you'll buy the filter. If you want to do business with Everett, on the Missouri side, it's St. Charles County, Lincoln, Franklin, Warren, St. Louis, and Jefferson. On the east side, it is Madison, Monroe, Jersey, and St. Clair. Joneswater.com, you'll be the filter or you'll buy the filter, 636-899-1040. All right. Let's bring in Ray McCarty. He made big news in Missouri when he sat down with Senator Joe Nicola, a Republican, and said, I am not down with Amendment 5. If you are around the country and you're like, okay, what are they going to talk about here with Amendment 5 in Missouri? What they're trying to do, it's a Republican leadership initiative. They want to transfer income taxes, state income taxes, through all kinds of different machinations, but they want to transfer state income taxes to sales and usage taxes. And most Republicans and most conservatives would go, oh, that's fantastic. Let's get out of that income tax. But at what price? So that's what we want to find out today. Is this a good move for the citizens of Missouri to put forth a framework that transfers out of, over time, the Missouri state income tax, transfers it into a Missouri sales and usage tax? And I don't think Ray McCarty is down with this situation. Ray McCarty is the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Missouri. Ray, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Thanks very much, Rob, for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm doing fine.
Okay, I got to find out what you think of Amendment 5. This is all the talk in Missouri right now. If you're in the political circles, this is the number one issue that everybody is talking about. You have a lot of conservative groups saying this is a great deal for Missouri, that you can choose your taxes when it's a sales or usage tax. It's usage tax. You cannot choose your taxes when it's taken out of your check for income. What are the pluses, the minuses, and how do you view this Amendment 5?
Oh, there are so many. I guess, first of all, I'd like for people to think about the fact that if everyone is paying income taxes now and some people are not going to be paying, none of us will be paying income taxes in the future, think about, what that's going to mean for your family, because that's really what this is about. Will you make up the amount that you're not having to pay in income taxes through sales and use taxes? Will businesses be paying taxes that they aren't paying today and then collecting it from you when you buy things? You're going to be paying more sales taxes on more services, things that are not taxable today. You're going to be paying tax on those. But if you think about it holistically, this proposal does not cut spending, right? It says you're going to replace the individual income tax with these sales and use taxes. So you think about people that are at the higher part of the income level, those people who are really wealthy, they're going to make out very well because they pay a lot of income tax They pay very little in sales and use taxes. If you're not cutting spending at all, who's going to pick up the tax they used to pay? And that's going to be everyone else. So that's one thing that people need to really remember. It's all, there's no tax cut in this. There's no cut in spending, but it is a shift in the taxes that are paid and who pays them. Sales taxes are known for being regressive. People at the lower end of the income scale spend a higher percentage of their income on things that they need. Sales and use taxes would apply to those. And if they expand the sales tax to more services, there's no guarantee that any service will be exempted. I know the governor, when he proposed this, said that he would not support a tax on agriculture and healthcare and real estate, but none of those protections were rolled into the amendment that people will be voting on. We asked for that to be the case. We asked for guardrails to be put in the legislation as it was going through the process to protect businesses and to protect exemptions that we have already, to protect people, but none of those were added. So we're concerned that people need to know exactly what they're voting on. There have been lies, or maybe not lies, but half truths on both sides in the advertisements that have been run. We've heard that people think this is somehow going to roll back property taxes, and you should know, while there is a chance that local governments could roll back property taxes, it's very minuscule. Let me explain that. So if we expand the sales tax base to things that are not covered today, let's say we tax lawn mowing services, then lawn mowing services will be subject to sales tax. They weren't before, and local governments will get a windfall from that. They will start collecting local sales taxes on those lawn mowing services. What the amendment provides is that they have to roll back either their local sales tax rate, which we think is what they would go to first, or the property tax rate. But it specifically says you can't cut the part of the property tax that goes to education. Well, what's the largest part of property tax? It's the part that goes to education. So for people that say that this will eliminate property tax, that's not what the legislation says. It does provide that local governments could roll back their property taxes a little, but they can't take out the major portion of the property tax. The other thing for people to remember is we're talking about the state income tax. That's a very small part for all of us compared to our federal income tax. You're still going to be paying federal income taxes. There's no exemption from that as it goes forward. So if you are thinking about this and you're thinking about your total tax bill, remember it's only the state tax that we're talking about, not the federal tax. We tried to work in some protections to make sure that we weren't ending up with a VAT tax. If a tax is applied to a business that purchases goods and services and then applied again when you sell the goods and services, that operates like a VAT tax, right? A value added tax. In other words, you're paying tax on tax if that flows through. We tried to stop that. We tried to put some language in there to make sure that didn't happen.
Ray,
That was
I got to stop you real fast because I just very, very funny that you say that. You said it's a tax on tax. Isaiah, how many times have I said that the only thing they have to tax that they haven't taxed is taxes themselves? And I used to joke about it. I used to say the next thing that our government will do is they will tax us on our taxes. Have I not said that, Isaiah?
Yeah.
Isaiah joked about that 1,000 times. A tax on a tax is the only thing they haven't taxed. You can't own property. You can't really own property if the government is charging you a fee to own your property. Therefore, you don't own it under any circumstance. Do you really own your property? You may think you own it because you have something that says you own it, but I promise you, if you don't pay your property taxes, they're going to put a lien on your house and you're not going to own your property. That is, to me, that's completely unconstitutional, but they do it and they go, well, we got to have schools. We got to have this. We got to have that. So they give you the property taxes. You get the income taxes. You get the sales taxes on just about everything you can think of. They've taxed us into oblivion. And a lot of people that are, and I'm curious what you think about this, Ray, because I just thought that was fantastic when you said it's a tax on a tax. We have to cut that. I have to have that for myself. But I look around and I think, you know what, I look at myself, for example. I was a high earner for about 25 years, high earner. And I look back at all the taxes that I paid when I was a high earner. And if I had half of it back, let's say half of those taxes back, I'd be retired. I mean, I would still do the show, but I'd be retired. I wouldn't have to worry about money. If I just had the money that I gave away to taxes, I would be able to retire, and I'm 56 years old. I'd be retired by now. And I can't retire. I'll probably work till I'm 90. My father started working when he was 11 or 12 years old. He's 79 years old. He's still working. Okay. This is the trap that we get into when we say we have to have this, we have to have that, we have to have this, we have to have everything that we think that we need through taxation. And when you look up at the end of the day and if you were to able to add all of the taxes that you spend on property tax, personal property tax, income tax, sales tax, tax on tax, every tax that they give you, and you could really look through it, right? Because when you go to the store and you buy something from, let's say you go buy groceries, right? You go to in Missouri, let's say you go to Schnucks, Deerberg's, Aldi's, Walmart, wherever you buy groceries, Target, and you look at the taxes that are on your groceries, you don't think anything of it. It's just a part of life. But if you were to add that all up, and then you buy a car and you look at the taxes and you add that up, and then let's say you own a small business and you have to pay property taxes on your trucks for your business, and you add that up, and then look at your income tax and you add that up, and then you own a home and you pay property on that home, and you start to add all these things together. Well, you start to recognize that you're kind of trapped into a system because they tell you need all these things, and the government can't function without that taxation. And I continue to say to my friends, I understand that you want nice schools. I understand that you want nice roads. I get it. But there is a level of deceit within the bodies of politics in this country that convinces relatively bright people that they have to be taxed into oblivion, that they must work an extra 15 or 20 years of their lives in order to survive because they need all of these things that the government tells them that they need. Do you see it through that lens? Do you see taxation as being suffocating the American citizen? Or do you just see this in different vacuums? This is a good tax. This is a bad tax. How do you see it personally?
Well, personally, I think you're right on track. And I think people would look at this differently if it truly was a reduction of tax. If we were saying we're going to reduce the amount of income tax you have to pay in the state of Missouri, which we've been doing, by the way, without this constitutional amendment, we've been reducing the amount of tax. We've gone from 6% several years ago to 4.7%. So we've cut it by a third already, almost. If you're cutting taxes, that's one thing. If you're shifting taxes, though, and you're planning on collecting the same amount of money, I mean, what you said is very true. We're going to be collecting taxes on taxes unless there are exemptions for things that businesses buy. They're going to roll those things into the prices that you pay, and then that entire price is going to be subject to sales tax. That's something that we really started from the very beginning, asking questions. Why are we doing this? The very big premise that started all of this conversation was somehow we were losing out to other states that did not have an income tax. So we did an analysis. We looked at different things that are important to business. The first thing to point out is that when you compare us with the states that don't have an income tax, Missouri is actually gaining these businesses. We gained more than 10,000 businesses between 24 and 25, while those states that have no income tax actually lost businesses. Tennessee is mentioned a lot. Tennessee lost nearly 10,000 businesses. Florida lost nearly 19,000 businesses, and we were gaining 10,000 businesses during that same time frame. So we don't think we're really losing the economic development game. Cost of living in Missouri is lower than any of those states that don't have an individual income tax. We have a lower corporate tax rate. Corporate taxes are not a part of this. That's another thing that we wanted to address when we talked today. People, some of the ads are saying that corporations have to pay their fair share. Well, corporation income tax is not included in this at all. Corporations don't get a tax cut, but there's no increase in the corporate tax either, at least in this amendment. So our corporate tax is lower than every state except 3, I think, and lower than all of the no income tax states. And then we have the lower business tax burden in Missouri than those states that don't have an individual income tax. And that's something else for business people to consider, and all of us, because remember, businesses don't pay tax, people do. The customers do. All of us pay, as you pointed out, tax on tax. When we buy anything, if we have a tax burden that's borne by a business, it's actually being borne by the customers of that business. And that makes us less competitive when we're trying to sell things. So I think the whole premise that we need to do something, in order to make Missouri a more attractive place, just doesn't really hold water when you start looking at the things that really matter to businesses when they decide where to locate and where to employ people. We're already doing a really good job in Missouri. We need to take credit for that as we move forward.
I got to ask you this because it says you're the state's oldest general business advocacy organization in Missouri. So
Right.
I just want to understand the process a little bit because I look at things primarily through a big picture lens. I'm not smart enough to get into the details too much. That's why I rely on very smart people to dig into the details. But I look at this from an executive point of view. You come in as the governor of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, and he says, "I'm going to get rid of your income taxes." Everybody goes, "Oh, Republican! They're going to shrink taxes. They're going to get rid of income taxes." And that's a staple in his campaign. He's going to get rid of income taxes. And I would guess the process goes like this. And I'm curious if you know or have a comment on it. I would guess that he comes in, he says he's going to get rid of income tax. They recognize they basically wasted the surplus of money that they had in the bank. They are getting about half of their budget from the federal government. And they look at that and they go, okay, we got to get rid of income taxes because that was a campaign promise. Let me get this off to a couple of people in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they'll write up legislation. And what we need to do is bring in the same amount of taxes, if not more. So we want to bring in the same amount of taxes or more, but we have to convince the voters of the state of Missouri that we did something to get rid of income taxes. Now let's put a framework together that fits that criteria. Do I have that pretty much right? Do you think that's the way this whole process works in reality? Is the governor makes a campaign promise? They really don't have the money to get rid of income taxes right now because they can't run their budget anyway. They're getting half the budget from the feds. So they have to come up with a framework or a scheme, is what a lot of people would like to call it, where we get rid of income taxes, but we don't lose any income in taxes. That's why you keep saying, well, we're not really getting rid of taxes. We're just shifting them. Is that the process that you think takes shape?
Well, don't want to say, what the governor's intent was, but I do know that the guardrails we were given was there would be no reduction in taxes. It's just a shift from one type of tax to another. And that's concerning. And you mentioned, the revenue of the state. The state auditor, Fitzpatrick, came out with a report several weeks ago and said that in FY28, we're going to be $1.2 billion short,
Right.
because we had used some of the monies that we received through the COVID and other things to patch the holes in our budget. We've actually been overspending, and we're spending $50 billion plus here in the state of Missouri now. And I understand that's gone up dramatically in the last 6 years. So you look at, we had a Band-Aid, if you will, that we were able to use to get us through those tough times, but that's all gone now. And the state auditor said we're going to be $1.2 billion in the hole in fiscal year 28. If your mandate from the people, if you're a legislator, Rob, and your mandate from the people that have passed this, let's assume Amendment 5 passes and you're an elected representative, your mandate is to eliminate the individual income tax, right? So you have to raise taxes enough to be able to offset the individual income tax. If you're starting with a $1.2 billion deficit, but you still have to eliminate the individual income tax, then you're going to have to not just cover the $7.8 billion that it takes to replace the individual income tax, you're also going to cover that $1.2 billion shortfall, or the tax doesn't go away because you aren't revenue neutral. And that's $9 billion in taxes for a $7.8 billion cut. That should concern people, because there are several things about this amendment. One of them is that the Hancock provisions that we all voted for in the early 80s, that require the state to go back to a vote of the people for any major tax increases, there's a 5-year path on that in this legislation. So, and the reason was a practical one. If voters approve Amendment 5, they don't want to have to go back. Then the legislature doesn't want to have to go back to the people and say, okay, well, you said this, so how about increasing this tax? How about increasing that tax? They didn't want to have to do that. But they rolled in a 5-year free pass from Hancock, which means that for 5 years, you're trusting the Missouri General Assembly and all those people who are elected to it to come up with a taxing scheme that you may or may not agree with, but you're not going to be asked again. They're going to come up with a taxing scheme that replaces all this revenue. And that's where it gets scary, and that's why we were working to try to put some guardrails in the amendment before it left the legislature, so that at least there would be some kind of framework about how we're planning on replacing those revenues. There is nothing like that in Amendment 5. It's completely a blank slate. They can tax whatever they'd like, and there's nothing that you as voters can do about it until they get done, and you can, not reelect those people if you want. Think about 5 years, though, Rob. That's kind of a magic number because there's 4-year terms in the Senate, 2-year terms in the House. You'd be dealing with an entirely different group of people that you don't even know yet who is going to be sitting there. I've done this 37 years now. I started writing tax law and working with tax law in 1989. And so for 37 years, I've watched the legislature change a lot. It's gone from complete Democrat-controlled supermajorities to Republican supermajorities. Whole different cast of characters every several years because of term limits. And, you do not know the people that are going to be serving and what decisions they're going to make. And asking somebody new coming in, let's say you're a newly elected representative, Rob, you come into the House and the House Speaker tells you, we've got to do this to be able to fulfill what the voters have said they want. They want to eliminate the individual income tax. And you have to vote for this package of taxes, whatever it is. What are you going to do? Are you going to buck the speaker? No, you're not. You're going to follow along and do what the speaker wants you to do. And so then you're really leaving a lot of your, you're giving away a lot of your power if you approve Amendment 5, because you won't be asked again about whether you like the taxes they come up with or not.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things that has been a sticking point for me. I like both people. I like people on both sides of this argument. Some of the people that are advocating for Amendment 5, I think they're really good people. I think they're well intended. I think they believe that this is going to be a really good thing for Missouri citizens and Missouri taxpayers. My question comes down to trust. I was just having a conversation with a grassroots group this morning on social media, and I said, the difference between the way you see the world and the way I see the world is you're a Republican through and through, and you see, you have a trust level that I don't have. I'm not trusting the legislature to do what you think that they're going to do, primarily for what you just said. This is a 5-year program. There's no framework. We don't know how this is all going to shape out. There's really no plan. There's a framework, but there's not a plan. And if there is no plan, how can you be assured that the people that get elected moving forward are going to adhere to the plan that's in your perceived mind? And part two of that is the power shift, right? Because if we give them these 5 years, you're basically saying we're going to allow all of these big industries and all of these service industries to come in and lobby you, because nobody wants their services being taxed, because again, that's going to raise their taxes, which means they're going to do less business. That's just the way business works, right? The more it costs, the less you're going to get of it. So if you're going to put a tax on me, it's going to hamper my business. Therefore, the power that these people are going to have to determine who's going to be taxed at what rate and how much is immense. I mean, you're really opening up the Pandora's box as far as and I want to know if I'm right, but this is the way I see it. You're opening up Pandora's box because you're bringing in new legislature that we don't know who they're going to be. You're going to bring these people in, and they are going to be lobbied to death by a lot of different service industries because they do not want their industry to be taxed, which really gives these people an enormous amount of power that I'm not sure I want to give to them. Do you see it through that lens, or am I crazy?
I certainly do. And, I am one of those lobbyists. Like I said, I've been a lobbyist for 37 years, either for the government or for private sector. So I've been on both sides of that equation as well. And I can tell you, because of the way our legislature works, the Senate is a very good place to stop legislation because we have unlimited debate. We have the filibuster, right? So if you can get several senators to stand up and block something, then you can block a bill. If this major bill is going through, think of the number of constituencies, the number of lobbyists that are going to be involved in this. This is really a full employment bill for lobbyists. Some of my fellow lobbyists may not like me saying that, but that's what it's going to be. Everyone who has an interest is going to try to make sure they are not included in the replacement tax scheme. Because remember, business doesn't get, the corporations don't get anything out of this. Individuals who have their own business, smaller businesses, and those who operate as a partnership or S corporation, they will benefit from it because they won't be paying in individual income tax anymore. And that's, a very high percentage of businesses will not be paying individual income taxes anymore. But you need to think about the flip side of that. How much is their business going to suffer because of the increased sales and use taxes they have to pay, both that they have to pay directly and those that they have to collect from customers? So, yeah, it definitely lobbyists are going to be involved in this conversation, will be involved in the conversation. We're not eager about increasing taxes on businesses at all. And we tried to work to, as I said, to get some guardrails in place just so we could support it. We were, as you said, we support a lot of the ideas around this, but when it comes to actually putting it in, usually tax reform means you're cutting taxes somewhere along the line. You're cutting spending. And this is not really tax reform. This is a tax shift. It's a change, a dramatic change in the way Missouri funds government, but it's not a tax cut. And I think when people see tax reform, sometimes they think that that means things are going to be better for them at the end of the process. And you have to weigh whether or not you think this is going to be better for you at the end of the day. I'm not here to say for or against, except that you be very careful, because this is a huge shift. This would be the largest shift in funding of state government that we've ever seen in the state of Missouri. And some of the other states that don't have an income tax started off that way or did that very early on. But you don't ever really get rid of taxes. I like to talk about Texas for a second. Texas has a constitutional prohibition, very much like this one, very much like Amendment 5, that says that you cannot have an individual income tax, you cannot have a corporate income tax, you can't have any taxes on income. But the legislature, after that passed, needed more money, so they decided to enact a tax on profit and call it a margin tax. So this is a new tax. It's a tax on profit, not on income, but on profit. It was challenged, and their Supreme Court said that that was a valid taxing scheme because it didn't tax income, it taxed profit. Well, what's the difference? You're only paying tax on net positive income anyway, which is profit. So, those types of tricks can be played by legislatures. And I'm not saying that they would be or wouldn't be, but I'm saying that happened already in Texas, which is one of the no income tax states. So that made us very, very concerned. There are also shifts in types of taxes to different new types of taxes, brand new taxes that are invented by the state. Ohio's done it, Michigan's done it, Washington's done it. And they create these new types of taxes that are gross receipts taxes, which are similar to a sales tax, but not exactly a sales tax. Well, guess what? Our language in Amendment 5 says that they can raise the taxes by sales taxes and use taxes and any similar transaction-based tax. So that really opens the door for a new type of tax that could be put in Missouri. Now, will that happen? We don't know. People are giving away their right to say whether they like that or not, though, when they vote on this for 5 years. And their only recourse would be to fire the people that they have elected to come in and represent them in Jefferson City, and that's going to be after the fact. Good luck getting rid of a tax once you've got it in place, which is very, very much where we find ourselves now. So we've urged caution. Our big message to everyone is to read this and don't just watch the advertisements. The advertisements on both sides are a little misleading, in my opinion. There are arguments the proponents are making, the people who support this. There are arguments that the opponents are making, the people who don't like this, that are not true. Get in there and figure out what this really does. And I think you'll find there are very few controls. There's a lot left open to the imagination. And you are, as a voter, only have this chance to decide if you want to approve this or not. If you don't approve it, then it wouldn't be a problem. But if you approve it, you're giving away your right to decide what the taxing scheme will be for a period of at least 5 years. And 5 years is a very long time when you're talking about legislation.
Couple more questions for you. First one is, it appears to me that we often get false choices in the legislation. When I look at this, I think, under normal circumstances, if you were to tell me that we're going to get rid of individual income taxes, I would be doing cartwheels down the driveway. Sounds fantastic to me. I would love to get rid of the individual income tax. So from that point of view, I think it would be fantastic. And then come the details, right? And as you're explaining, the details might wash out all the love that I would have for getting rid of the individual income tax. And this is the kind of the argument I have sometimes with the legislators down in Jefferson City. Why not? We have several grassroots organizations that pick my ear every day, and they're like, Rob, this is what's going on. Be careful. This is what's going on. Make sure that you articulate what's happening here, because they're against Amendment 5 for multiple reasons. One of the guys that we had on, Josh Lehman, he runs an operation called Missouri Rhino Watch, and he has been very adamant against this, almost hostile against Amendment 5. And he said, why wouldn't we just say, you know what, as revenue grows in the state of Missouri, we reduce the income tax, which we're doing now, and just allow that to take shape, and then we get rid of the Missouri income tax. Now we're cutting taxes. As revenue goes up, we offset it with the income taxes. Now we're cutting income taxes. He goes, that's what we're doing now, but now we're going to escape that for some new scheme, which is really a transfer of taxes, which gives a lot of power to the legislature and lobbyists to craft a new tax scheme. Do you agree with that point of view?
Absolutely. We were champions of the income tax reductions that we've done already. We actually handled the legislation a couple of years ago that reduced it to 4.7% under Governor Parson. And that framework is still there in statute. There is a floor on that. It can only go down to, I think, 4.5%. So, but that floor could be removed. You could take that away and just let natural growth be reinvested in tax cuts. And that's what we've been doing. You would never get to zero necessarily, but you'd get really, really low. And maybe at that point, you talk about eliminating the individual income tax, because the tax would be so low, it wouldn't be such a large dollar amount that you'd be trusting legislators to shift. But that process already exists without Amendment 5. Legislators could do that with a bill. And all they have to do is going to make one small legislative change to that language and reduce that or eliminate that floor that we call it, the minimum amount of tax rate that's allowed in the statute. Just eliminate that and allow the taxes to be reduced through growth. That's worked out very well. You know, the whole premise about that was that we would take some of the growth of state revenues that are coming from all of us who are taxpayers and reinvest that in reducing taxes. It was a great scheme, and it was something that we've done, and it's been very good. It's come without consequence, really, and very different from other states. You remember Kansas went and did a major tax reduction, had to come back in and undo it because they didn't have enough revenue to pay for everything. And actually, this proposal, when it first started, created a shortfall first and then asked legislators to scramble and replace the revenue, which we thought was extremely dangerous. We're glad at least that the final version of the bill doesn't operate that way. It does operate on increasing taxes for sales and use taxes, and then that growth is used to reduce the individual income tax. It does bring up a point. For a period of time, we're going to be paying both. We'll be paying individual income tax and the higher sales and use taxes until they get the revenue in the door and reduce the individual income tax and eliminate it. So there is a little bit of double taxation that's going to happen just by the pure mechanics of it.
Right. That's the argument that Act for Missouri was making. So another grassroots organization that has come out against Amendment 5, they made the same argument you just made. And then secondly, and they basically said they want to do that. They'll get the double taxation for a little bit, and then it'll run out as it gets closer to the 5 years. They'll figure out something from there, but they'll take the double taxation in the short term because that's good for them. That's good. It's bringing in revenue for the state. But they also said that the way the language reads, and I'll be curious if you see it this way or if you even recognize it yet. They say it opens up the door because of the language to potentially adding toll roads in the state of Missouri. They say they look at the language. They say, look, if there's a little seed of something in here, it mentions the highways, and they go, why would they mention the highways in a tax bill? It doesn't make any sense unless they're trying to open the door for toll roads, which there was legislation put forth by a Republican to bring in toll roads in the state of Missouri. Have you seen that? Is that something you paid attention to? Do you see within that language maybe a little crack in the door to allow for toll roads in the state of Missouri?
So there's a constitutional requirement right now that taxes that are paid on the use of the highways, including motor vehicle fuel taxes, motor vehicle sales taxes, taxes on trailers, boats, and outboard motors, all those things are used to fund, or some portion of them, major portion of them, are used to fund the roads. There is a provision in Amendment 5 that makes an exception to most of that section that requires those monies to be spent for transportation. It does not include motor fuel taxes. That's one of the things that we saw in an ad, that this could be a sales tax on motor fuel. That has been taken off the table. So if they increase taxes on motor fuel, that would have to go to roads still, even with Amendment 5. But they did make an exception for other types of taxes. So the taxes that we pay on motor vehicles, when you go and buy a motor vehicle, there's a part of that sales tax that goes to the highway fund and is used to fund roads. This makes an exception and allows them to increase the tax rate, let's say by 2%, which is what proponents are saying. They think it would go up by 2%, which incidentally would make us the highest in the nation with our combined state and local tax. But let's say it goes up by 2%. That means when you go and buy a motor vehicle, you're going to be paying an extra 2%. And normally that would have to go toward roads. This says that it doesn't have to go toward roads, so they could use that to help offset the individual income tax. Cars have become a very large ticket item, right? So if you go and buy a $60,000, $70,000 car, that's a pretty sizable chunk when you talk about an extra 2%. And so that exception is in Amendment 5. Now, whether it opens the door to toll roads, I don't know. People need to probably understand that toll roads on major interstates or interstates at all are not allowed under the federal law unless you have some kind of exemption. And for a time, we did have that exemption. That time has come and gone. So toll roads, if you want to put them in, you can put them in for non-interstate roads. So like they did at the Lake of the Ozarks to build the bridge, they put in a toll for a period of time, paid for that bridge, and then stopped the toll. You can do that already. Does it open the door for that? Maybe, because there is no requirement that it be spent on roads. Do I see that happening? I don't really think that would happen. Toll roads are not really popular at all. And even when we were trying to raise money for rebuilding I-70, toll roads were one of the things that was on the table in I-44, and they just weren't popular at all. People that trotted them out there, it was a great idea in concept, but when you looked at the dollar amount that you'd have to pay, a $10 toll or so to get on I-70, that was just not something that made any sense. And as I said, that time on those interstates is come and gone.
I tend to agree with you. I was saying to myself, if this happens, if the Republican Party is responsible for introducing toll roads in the state of Missouri, that will be the end of the Republican Party, because people hate I hate toll roads, and I think if they brought in toll roads, people would lose their marbles. So I kind of agree with you. It may open the door. I just don't think that they would crawl through that door, because that would be politically not advantageous, if you will. Okay, one other question. In the language of the bill, somebody was just texting me recently, and they said it says revenue. It does not say revenue neutral, although the
No.
ad continues to say revenue neutral. It's really not necessarily revenue neutral. It does have some guardrails in it. Does that language seem a little bit misleading to you when they say revenue neutral? How do you see the revenue neutral? Because this is a big talking point within the people that are advocates for Amendment 5. Do you see
Yes.
that's a little bit misleading, the revenue neutral conversation?
Yes, I do. First, to start out, just by the language of the amendment, it's not revenue neutral, because local governments, we talked about, if we put in a tax on services that aren't taxed today, that's going to raise the amount that local governments get, and they have to roll back their taxes. They only have to roll back to 97% of what they got before. So they get to keep 3% of the additional money that comes in on those services. So it's not revenue neutral. We're going to be paying more. They're going to be keeping more. They're not going to roll back the entire amount that they get from taxing additional services. So it's not revenue neutral from that standpoint. Again, the transition period, when we're going through and we're looking at raising sales taxes so that the increase in revenue can be used to reduce the individual income tax, you're going to have a period of time we have both taxes in place. So from that aspect, it's not revenue neutral either. The bill does say that the legislation that's passed, so a particular bill, has to have offsetting revenue reduction. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be a period of time where you aren't paying additional taxes. And there's also no requirement that, like I said, with the $1.2 billion shortfall, there's nothing that says that can't be covered either. Now, the sponsor of the bill disagrees with that. He and I had a conversation about that. He thought it was disingenuous for me to suggest that the legislature would cover that $1.2 billion that Auditor Fitzpatrick says we're going to be short. I don't think so at all, because if you're going to generate enough revenue to eliminate the individual income tax, you have to cover whatever shortfall there is there already. And people may not even be thinking about that. That's a huge amount of money, $1.2 billion. The better our plan would be to cut spending. I know the governor has supported cutting spending in the past. It's very hard to cut spending, though, Rob. Legislators don't like to cut spending. They're not very popular when they cut spending and programs are being cut. So spending cuts are very hard to come by. This doesn't provide for any spending cuts at all. And again, legislators can do that anytime they want. They can reduce spending. They can already reduce the individual income tax if they like. But this is going to be a mandate from voters saying that they want to completely eliminate the individual income tax and replace it with sales and use and other similar transaction-based taxes, which we don't know what those are. And we're going to be trusting legislators to be able to do that over a 5-year period without any additional checking with the voters to see what they think about it. And that seems to be dangerous.
Yeah, interesting. I'm paraphrasing, but America will be prosperous and free until legislators realize they can bribe the people with their own money. And it kind of feels like that's the situation that we are in. Last question, because I think this is an important one. You're not a Marxist communist, are you? Because I understand if you're against A5, somehow you are a Marxist communist. You're not a Marxist communist by chance, are you, Ray?
No, Rob, I am not, not by any means. In fact, I have been involved in every major tax thing, as I said, that's happened since 1989. This is the most dramatic thing we've ever seen. And it's a big question for people, whether they support it or not. I just think people really need to realize what they're voting for if they vote for this. That's all we're asking for. The ads on both sides are exaggerating everything. And, we understand that that's politics. That's the way things roll. But if people don't take the time to figure out what this really means for them and their families, and they just go and vote based on the advertisements they're seeing, then likely whatever advertisement they saw last is going to drive their vote. And we really should put a little more thought into that, a lot of more thought into that when we're talking about such a major shift in tax policy. And that's all we're saying.
And I would say that right now, based on what you understand within this amendment, you would be a no.
I personally, yes, I probably will be a no. Don't like to say how I'll vote on things, but yeah, I'd say I, want to make sure that the government responds to me as a voter. And this is giving away my choice as a voter to legislators that may not have been elected yet. And for me, who's dealt with the legislature for a really long time, that's a little dangerous to just imagine who may be in office and what their political philosophies may be, whether they may try to increase revenues and through trickery and get away with it. It's happened before and it will happen again. And we're, as an organization, we're, ready to try to get in and implement it if it happens to pass. But, people really need to think about this before they decide to support it and really look beyond the advertisements that they're seeing and decide, is this something that it makes sense for them? One thing you want to remember, though, if there are very wealthy people who are not paying income tax anymore, who's picking up their bill? Because they're not going to spend as much. Some of the ads even say that. They're not going to spend as much as they make. Of course they're not. So where does that liability come from? It comes from the rest of us who are not wealthy. And we'll be paying more in sales and use taxes than to make up that difference. Another thing that people haven't really thought about much, I don't think, is the impact on senior citizens. My mother is a senior citizen now, and she's retired. And so through her entire life, she and her husband, my dad, paid taxes on individual income tax all the way until the time that now she is able to enjoy the reduced tax liability already on her individual income tax. But she's going to have to pay more for things that she buys if she has to pay a higher sales tax. And so she's going to be paying twice.
Yeah.
That's not really fair either.
I heard that argument. I thought, boy, I never really thought about that, but that's true, right? Because if you're nearing retirement, you've been paying income tax the whole time. Then you get into retirement, they get rid of the income tax. Now you're on a fixed income, and now you're paying sales and usage taxes. Kind of get whacked both ways. Ray, I really like your presentation. I like your rhythm. I like everything about you. I want to get in contact with you. I have an organization called People's Lobby Missouri, and I need somebody who really focuses on taxes. So I'm going to be in touch with you. I'm hoping that maybe we can join hands together because I think you're the right temperament for what we are looking at, because I don't understand all the tax implications. We're really focused on elections. We really pay attention to that. But when it comes to taxation, you got to understand and have a history with taxation in the state of Missouri. And it sounds like that's where you're at. So maybe we should join hands together, and you kind of lead the charge for us when it comes to taxation, and we'll help you. You help us, kind of thing. Is that fair?
That's great, Rob. Send me information. I'll be happy to look at it.
You got it. Ray McCarty, everybody. Ray McCarty, let me give you your title one more time. You are the president and CEO of Associated Industries of Missouri. I really appreciate your time and your perspective. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you very much, Rob.
You got it. Ray McCarty, everybody. Very interesting. And I'll tell you, I think he is, Isaiah, when you listen to him, it sounds like a lot of people that are talking to us. And, I want to be very clear that when it comes to this issue, there are people that are fighting for A5 that have a amount of respect for. This is, and I think you talked about went out to Mose. I don't want this to be these people are trying to screw you over. Now, there might be somebody that's in there that's really, okay.
I don't think there's
that either.
A collusion of these representatives and senators to hurt us. You know what I mean? I really do think that after talking with them and pressing them on some really hard questions in person, one-on-one, like you always say, they really believe it. They really believe that this is going to help. And so I can't fault them for that. Something he said that you guys didn't dig into that I just wanted to make people aware of is that he mentioned the revenue neutral language, right? And I called Representative Davidson out at that meeting because that's the term they used during the entire presentation. But right before he went up, I called him out personally, one-on-one. I said, "Hey, that's not what it says in the amendment there.
Substantially equal, right?
That's substantially equal." And I said, those are two different definitions. And he admitted they are two different definitions. because revenue neutral would hold them to a higher standard than what substantially equal does. Substantially equal gives them legal leeway to make a little more here. You know what I mean? And we can't do anything about it. And so when they say, oh, well, we got these protections, right? The courts are going to strike it down. Well, they've already built in that language to protect them to where they can make a little bit more. But if they use the terms revenue neutral, then we could hold them accountable because it'd be like a dollar for dollar almost, right? But that's what I just want to paint that picture for people so they understand there's a reason they use that word in the bill. And then there's a reason they're using that word when they're talking to you in person.
Yeah.
And so be sure to talk to them. They're going to give you a good answer. It's going to sound really good of why they have to do that. Just
you know what it is, Isaiah? I just got to give you this because you and I have been in sales. I mean, you're a younger guy, but we've been in sales and understand sales techniques. And, you know, when you hear language like that, and God bless them, they're trying, you and I sell, you know what I'm selling?
I trained the biggest sales teams in the world right now. You know, that's what
my whole life, right? My whole life. So I recognize it right away. And I love salesmen. I'm more susceptible to buy something from a good salesman than I am anybody else because I appreciate good salespeople.
Same.
Right? I'm the same way. So when I see people come in and I see like Bishop Davidson or Ben Brown and they're selling this, they're selling it. They believe in it and they're selling it. And oftentimes when you are when you're selling something, you're not lying. You're kind of bending the information in the direction you want people to go. So that's the way this language is. It's like, you know, the old saying, you know, when you're selling something, you say it's virtually this. Well, virtually means nothing.
Exactly.
But virtually gives the impression that this is what it's going to be because it's virtually that way. But virtually,
typically,
usually,
right?
Right. These are these are words that don't trap you in a lie, but kind of persuade people in another direction. So when I see them talking, and I'm not bad mouthing them at all.
This is how sales works. It's nothing. It's nothing against them. This is how it works.
Correct. I see a sales job going on, which I just wish that when it came to politics, when it comes to legislation, that we would not be such salespeople. You'd say, listen, here's the reason I believe this is a good thing. I trust the legislature, because you'd have to say that you trust the legislature. Really, that's what you really need to say. That was I was in it with Freedom Principle this morning, and I think
why don't we trust them, Rob? That's what they want to ask me.
Right. Well, that's why
they don't trust us. Why not?
And I gave them reasons why we don't trust them. You know, I said that this morning. I was going back and forth with Freedom Principle, and I think Freedom Principle and the people involved believe this. I think that they think it's a great thing. They're down with it. I think everybody that's pushing for it on that end, I really believe that they think this is a really good thing for the voters and the citizens of Missouri. So I'm not coming from they have ulterior motives.
No,
I'm just saying that, you know, when you're explaining legislation that's going to affect the lives of millions of people, just give them the real skinny. Just say, you know what, the reason we think this is good legislation and the reason we framed it this way is because we know what our intent is, and we believe that the next legislators that come in will have the same intent. We put enough guardrails on them to make this work this way. Could it go off the rails a little bit with the future legislature if they want to do this or that and the other? Yes. But we believe that we put enough guardrails in it to make it work. And I think if you were honest in that direction, I think it would gain a little bit more. I don't know, but I say that, but I'm not really sure that that's the outcome. I would assume.
Well, what the people were asking at the meeting, were they saying, I know you mentioned the word framework, and there are elements of a framework in here, right? The people don't feel like there's enough of a framework because they don't know what's going to be taxed. And so the legislature is telling us, yes, there's a framework because we built this guardrail and we built this right? Oh, nothing before 2015, right? Can't tax things that are before 2015. Okay. Well, the Supreme Court can strike it down if we do this, right? But that's not what the people are saying, right? So
I think I'm starting.
They're saying, hey, we just want to know, what are you going to tax? Can you tell us that? Can you tell us what you are and are not going to tax? And if you can't tell us that, why should we trust you? You just passed a gas tax that we didn't want. You, especially here in Franklin County, think about it. This is a meeting happening in Franklin County. You installed Dave Schatz in Franklin County, and no one wanted him here. Mike Moon, filibuster. You know, it's like that's.
I'm gonna put out.
You think about all those things, right? If you think about all that, that's why we don't trust you.
It's funny you say that because that's what I'm getting ready to say. Because
really,
here's the way I look at it.
We don't plan this, guys. By the way,
we don't at all. But I think we share a little bit of the same perspective because we talk every day. And I said, you know, the real difference between the people that are proponents of A5, that are conservatives and Republicans and believe in conservative money, the reason there's a disconnect is a trust issue, and that's what I was explaining to Freedom Principle today from my perspective. I said I said you guys are Republicans and you trust the Republican Party to do good things, and that's fine. I'm not mad at you for that. I don't have that same trust, and I said here's why I don't have that same trust. I think that we talked about it with Jen Olson and Ali Grafe. Secretary of State Denny Hoskins, he ran, and I can play the audio for you if you'd like. He ran on the idea of getting rid of electronic voting systems. That's what he ran on. That's why I endorsed him. That's why the grassroots were behind him. And we're not going to get that done. Okay, so that's not happening. So that's a trust that is broken with me, right? I wanted that done. It's not getting done. The Republican legislature, it's a supermajority. So if they don't want to change the elections, well, then they're not going to change them. And they're going to use rhetoric to convince people that the elections are just fine. Robb's crazy. Ali's crazy. Jen's crazy. Everybody's contesting the elections. They're all crazy, right? But that's not what Denny Hoskins ran on. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the Missouri caucuses. I mean, I'm not going to get into that story right now, but if you were there in the 2024 Missouri caucuses, you know what happened, and you know there was some fraud of sorts that happened in the Missouri caucuses. You have the gas tax, which you just mentioned. You have the appointment of Dave Schatz, right? So you start to see these things. One, Jeffrey Winehouse still being in prison, right? That is something that should be done.
That video's got 50,000 views on Instagram now. We just posted it, and people are asking over and over again, "What happened? What happened?"
Oh, I got to get involved. I don't pay attention to Instagram, but I got to pay attention to that. But to the point, right? You have an innocent man that everybody knows is innocent. Every single person in Missouri government who has followed the case of Jeffrey Winehouse knows that an innocent man has been locked up for 13 years on a 30-year sentence. That is an absolute fact. There is no doubt about that. It is 100%. Nobody would ever enter into a debate with me or his attorney or the guy that produced the documentary about his case. Nobody would ever take a debate with us because they can't win it. They can't win it. So all they do is they continue to ignore us. So when you add all of those things together, what you have is an erosion of trust within the Republican Party that they must address before they say trust us on taxes. Is that fair?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
I think so. I'm just a peon, a measly alderman, right? I'm nothing. But what I've found, I'm trying to do what I'm practice what I preach is exactly what I'm trying to do as an alderman. And you've seen the videos, Rob, and I don't know if everyone's seen, but I put out videos whenever we have a meeting. I put out videos explaining what's on the agenda, why it's going to affect. And I don't always say how I'm going to vote because sometimes I don't know. I want to have conversations with the other aldermen at the dais and have public conversation to see, what's going on. Are there things that I don't know about, right, that I need to know about? And there was a big issue that recently we voted on in the community here with a road here. So we are annexing in some property from the county into the city, and they want to build some homes there. And the people that live on that road right now were a little upset because they said, hey, that's more houses. Our roads are going to get used more, right? And I had to do my due diligence because I represent them. And if my people are telling me they don't want that, then I gotta go with the people, right? But when I did my research, I found out even if I voted no, that developer could still build that building because he would just go to the county to get it built. And then guess what? They could still use the roads, but they would not pay any property taxes to use the roads.
And now it's your duty.
Yes. Right? And I told the voters about that, right?
Your duty is to inform the voters of the
And system. I did. And they were so happy, Rob.
Exactly.
They came in, their faces were mad at me, looking like this, Rob, telling me why. I said, hey, I'm the only one who did this on the board. And I talked to them, went face to face, talked to them at the meeting, shook their hands, and I explained my position. As soon as they said that, they're like, wait, so it's not like a 20-story apartment complex building? I was like, no, that's not what it is. They're like, oh, okay. And they asked more questions. And they found out that everything that they thought was not the case, right? Mm-hmm. And then once they found out that what I had learned, that the building would still be built even if we voted no, they said, that makes sense, Isaiah. We do want the taxes.
Well, this is what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah. Sorry for a long story there, but I hope that just puts it in perspective of how you can just go to them and talk to them and learn and be for the people.
Just be honest and find a way to communicate with your constituents on a continual basis so they understand that you're shooting straight with them. I agree 100%. Let's do a little advertising. Ron, I apologize. I know Ron's listening in. We're a little bit late with Ron Calzone. I can't wait
to go over a little bit if we need to.
I think I've invited Ron Calzone on the show several times and I just never executed it. So Ron, I apologize. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. One of our listeners said, now let's talk about Amendment 4. So Ron Calzone put out a piece. I think
might have to have you. His audio is having issues, so I might have you call him just to talk to him on your phone. But we'll still be able to see him. on video. You just might have to talk to him through your phone if that's okay.
If he can go out and come back in, and if it doesn't work,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
call him.
If you jump out and jump back in, sometimes, Ron, it works. If you just, I'll kick you out of the room, and then you can just rejoin on the same link. Okay. Let's see
and make
here.
sure his mic is on and everything. You know the deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Valvoline Express Care. Let's get the advertisers taken care of very quickly, and then we'll bring in Ron Calzone. We'll talk about Amendment 4 in the state of Missouri. Today is about Missouri politics. And again, if you're listening from around the country, I have people that tell me that they get very, they're like, Rob, I don't want to hear about Missouri politics. You know, these are people from around the country. I said, I know, but this is going on in your state. You have to understand the full situation, local, state, federal, international politics. We tie them together so you can see how the whole system, how politics works just in general. Okay. Valvoline Express Care, Isaiah, I just went there the other day. He says, Rob, he goes, one of the things that I impress upon the people that work for us is to be friendly, to be quick, and to be efficient. And I just got to tell you, they were absolutely fantastic. I just went and got my oil changed. The people there were wonderful, had a great time. Valvoline Express Care. I know it sounds crazy, but you're going to sit there for 30 minutes with people working on your car. They talk to you. You kind of get the environment. And it was just fantastic. St. Peter's Parkway was the location. I just got to say to Tony Clark, the people there were absolutely wonderful. They do tell you what's wrong with your car, but there's not an ounce of pressure. They're trying to talk you into something. They say, okay, here's what our diagnostic test says. What do you want to do here? And that was it. Valvoline Express Care. If you want to get coupons, Valvoline-expresscare.com. 15 minutes from bay to on your way. Quick, easy, efficient oil changes. No sales pressure. All Valvoline branded products. Tony Clark's been with us for a long time. We want to make sure that when it's time for an oil change, you consider Valvoline Express Care. Can we go to the locations because this is a franchise operation, so they're not, every Valvoline Express Care is not the same. We want to give our business to Tony Clark. Here are the locations. Listen closely. Cape Girardeau, Missouri, Highland, Illinois, Troy, Illinois, Lemay Ferry Road, Warrenton, Missouri, Mid Rivers Mall Drive, and St. Peter's Parkway. When it's time for an oil change, it's always Valvoline Express Care and a good friend, Tony Clark, Valvoline-expresscare.com, Valvoline-expresscare.com. If you want coupons, and Isaiah, as you told me once before, if I do not see that sticker in your window, how in the world can we possibly be friends?
Get packing.
Can't happen. Got to go.
We got Ron all fixed up, so whenever you're ready to go, but finish the advertising. I just
let me do Mo's early this time because I always
Absolutely.
save it for last, and people, they kind of wander in and out. So I want to get Mo's just a little bit earlier today because I absolutely.
And they're open today.
They're open today, and I love Mo's Pizza. So when it's lunchtime and you're in Franklin County or in Washington, Missouri, it's always Mo's Pizza. They have a delicious salad and pizza bar. They have great chicken wings, delicious sandwiches. They have just the best ice cream I've ever had. And I love ice cream, Isaiah. I absolutely love ice cream. Theirs is absolutely fantastic. And again, when you're in Washington, Missouri, if you have any kind of get-together, a gathering, let's say, they have banquet space available for birthday parties, anniversaries, political meetings, and Bible studies, or any kind of gathering. Family-friendly environment, great people. They have been proud sponsors of our show for a long time. There is Mike and Brenda Johns, just terrific environment. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. If you get a chance, get out there to Franklin, Missouri, to Washington, or Franklin County, Washington, Missouri. Mo's Pizza at the corner of Grand and 5th Street in Washington. God owns the place. He just works there when it's time for lunch. It is Mo's Pizza.
He told me he appreciates that I mention it. So don't forget, you can order on DoorDash too, so you can get delivery now. So that's super important since they're a pizza place.
Are you stealing Mike and Brenda from me? Don't steal Mike and Brenda from me.
I just live so close.
I see you.
It's one of the best. I will tell you, if you have kids, it is one of the best places to take with your kids because it's. I have a 2-year-old, right, and I have an infant, and he's crazy, and he's screaming or farting really loud or something crazy, right? And then my daughter's running around like a crazy person around the buffet. Right, she's running in circles, and they don't mind at all.
Pizza and ice cream can't be pizza and ice cream. Good Lord, no. The kids, come on.
Especially for the kids, the kids I think get a free ice cream with their buffet meal.
Do they really?
Yeah, they get a little card, and I think they give it out to the kids to get a free ice cream.
I did not know. Now I know.
So you're gonna have to get a kids buffet when you go from now, Rob, and then they'll give you a free little.
I'll dress like I'm 8 and I'm 6 to see if I can get away with it. I'll tell them.
Like one of the crazy liberals, with the Democrat socialists, they wear their diapers or something and maybe a furry suit or something like that.
My buddy Gary, every time he sees the show, he sends me a text message, says something about my gray hair. He goes, dude, gray's getting kind of crazy in there. I said, so long as I have it, I'm fine. I'm getting a little thin back there in the back portion.
Before we move on, didn't get a chance to bring John in. Great comment this morning, though.
This is my buddy John, who I want to play golf with here before Too Terribly Long. He says, good morning to the incredibly talented and handsome Isaiah. And what's his name? Which I guess is me. Thanks, John, for the comment of the day. You love him, don't you?
He's too good. There was other people were laughing at it in the comments. We were serious talking about elections with Ali and Jen, so I didn't want to throw it on the screen. We were talking about that stuff, but I figured before we bring Ron in, it'd be a great opportunity here.
Too funny. All right, let's bring him in. Ron Calzone, the infamous, no, not infamous, the famous, not infamous. That's the wrong word. Rob, Ron Calzone. Ron, let's see if we can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think infamous is probably more accurate.
I've been trying to get you on for quite some time, and primarily because you put out great pieces onto social media. And every time I read them, I'm thinking this guy is of the same mind as I am. So I've been trying to get you on for probably a year now. And I think I blew it a couple times. I invited you on and I didn't follow up. So I apologize for that. But I'm so glad to have you on. I know you caught Isaiah's attention about Amendment 4. So Ron Calzone, founder of Missouri First Inc., and you wrote a piece on the Amendment 4 situation. And I kind of agree with you. When I'm going to put out a piece here before too long. I'll put out a social media post about Amendments 4 and 5 because it affects my organization. And I thought your piece was right on the money again. So I think you're doing God's work, my friend. So tell me what you think of Missouri Amendment 4, the way it's structured now. Is it good or bad for the people of Missouri? What's your take?
Well, I think it's awful. And I think why should your viewers really care what I think? I mean, what difference do I make? Maybe it's important for those who don't know me to know a little bit about my history. So should we spend 3 minutes doing that?
Of course.
Okay. So first of all, you're right. I did help found Missouri First. And, Missouri First is a constitutional, limited government, free market think tank. We've been around for about 3 decades. And for about those 3 decades, I've been a regular fixture at the Capitol as an unpaid citizen activist. And so I'm there as a watchdog, trying to watch what government is doing and what they're not doing and trying to keep them within the bounds of the Constitution. More recently, we've founded something called the Article 3 Institute. The Article 3 Institute is a nonprofit that's dedicated solely to the purpose of suing the government when they pass unconstitutional bills. So if they pass a bill that has more than one subject in it, which is prohibited by the Missouri Constitution, or they change the purpose of the bill, which is kind of like a bait and switch, or maybe they're conveying public money to private parties, which is also forbidden by the Constitution, we sue or we fund lawsuits. Right now, we have 3 lawsuits going. There are 2 in the Missouri Supreme Court, 1 in the Western Court of Appeals. And there you go. You guys are good. So that's the okay. So you're not going to take credit for that, Rob?
Oh, that's Isaiah for sure.
It's whenever things go wrong, it's my fault too.
Okay, that's right. We'll buy that. So that's the Article 3 Institute website. You notice there is a donate button at the top right-hand corner. That's the only money that I have ever been involved in collecting over the 3 decades. I never get paid. I never accept anything for what I do. And all of that money that's donated to Article 3 Institute goes towards those lawsuits. The board members and the executives of the Article 3 Institute don't get paid a single penny. And so I think that makes a difference when you are in the game and your income doesn't depend on it. I'm a rancher and I own a manufacturing business. That's my source of income. When you're not making money from politics, your perspective is a little bit different.
Right.
I was around like Ray was when the Democrats were still in control of the Missouri legislature and for that matter, the governor's office a few decades ago. And I was there for the transition between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I am one that believes that there will be a day when the Democrats, it might be 10, 20, 50 years from now, but there will be a day when the Democrats take over the control of the legislature again. I think they have more control right now than people realize. I think there's more Democrats with an R behind their name than people realize. And that's why we see a lot of Democrat policy coming out of a Republican supermajority. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of my perspective. I was here in 2005, 2006, when the Kelo opinion came down from the U.S. Supreme Court. And that, if you remember, was the case that said that government can take private property for private use if there's a public benefit, like the tax base increases or something like that. Everybody and every Republican for several years ran on protecting property rights after that 2005 Kelo opinion. In 2006, the Missouri General Assembly passed their solution to eminent domain abuse, but it was a placebo because the lobbyists got in control. So I used, and here's I'm circling back. I am on topic. Trust me.
It's okay.
That I used the initiative petition process, and I was in charge of an amendment that would have stopped private use eminent domain. It would have just said, you can't do it. You can't use, whether there's a public benefit or not. You can't use the government's sword of eminent domain to take one private piece of private property and convey it to some other private party. We raised about $1 million. The project cost me a couple $300,000 out of my own pocket, that in addition to that $1 million. And we tried to amend the Constitution. We missed ballot access by about 3,000 signatures in one of the congressional districts. So we got really close. We collected 428,000 signatures. So that informs me in two ways. Number one, maybe more than two. I'll tell you how many when I get done listing them. Number one, you can't count on the legislature to do something that's even a 90% issue. All the polls said that if we put that on the ballot, 90% of the voters would have said no to private use eminent domain. They would have said yes to our amendments. So it was an immensely popular matter, but we still couldn't get the legislature to do something like that because the lobbyists got a hold of them. So that's lesson number one from that experience. Lesson number two is it's incredibly difficult to get something on the ballot unless you have a pile of money. And some would say that $1 million was a lot of money. It was then, but now it takes $2, $3, $4 million to get something on the ballot. So it does take a pile of money to do it unless you have an incredibly organized grassroots effort. So it's really, 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 really difficult to use the initiative petition process as it is right now, as is evidenced by the fact that there's 5 amendments that voters will be voting on this year in between August and November, and all of them were proposed by the legislature. Okay, so none of the IPs made it to the ballot. So those are some of the things that inform me about my view on Amendment 4. For those who don't know, I've been protecting the initiative petition process for all these years because they wanted to gut it. And so I've been, I think, actually responsible for killing some of the bad IP bills. I was the architect of the Second Amendment Preservation Act, so I hope that helps a little bit with my conservative limited government bona fides. And then we talked about
before you go further, I want to remind people, because I'm very interested in what you have to say. This is something that I've been 50-50 on. Right. I heard what you had to say, or I read what you had to say about Amendment 4, and you're swaying me because that was my initial gut feeling was it's creating a higher bar for the citizens, and it remains the same for the legislature. And I don't have the trust level, and maybe I have a feeling you're probably in the same boat with me. I just don't have the trust level
exactly
with the legislature. So I want to say to everybody, please, if you are somebody who is interested in A4, which all Missouri citizens should be, share, comment, and subscribe. This is how we get this information out to more and more people. I know a lot of people are interested in what you have to say because I got some text messages this morning. So people in the game are very interested in what you have to say because they're against Amendment 4 and they know you are as well. So if you're listening to the show, help us share, comment, subscribe, share, comment, and subscribe, because we want more and more people to see what Ron has to say, because this is going to be a big issue. This changes the way your relationship with your government, the relationship with.
We'll put these interviews out too on YouTube. We'll cut them up and put them out so people can watch the Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 analyzation too.
Exactly, and I think that this is a big deal, because if you want to be able to direct your government, you have to do it through the IP process. Right now we have that process, and it goes a certain way. They're going to raise the bar through Amendment 4, which makes me very nervous. And I just wanted to say that before you got started, because I want more people to hear what you have to say. So Ron, continue on. I apologize for interrupting you.
Well, no, that's all. That all is very helpful and good background. And I'm, I agreed to do this because I know that you've got some legs, and this will reach other people. It's something that they can access. But anyway, the point is that ultimately the people that are supporting Amendment 4 will say we're a republic, aren't we? We're not a democracy. We're a republic. And what does a republic mean? They'll say a republic is a source of government in which you are represented and your representatives make the decisions for you. Well, I'm afraid that's a pretty juvenile understanding of what a republic is. Yeah, that's an element of a republic. But if you go back and you look at what was said, for instance, in the Federalist Papers, when they were trying to sell the idea of a United States republic, you'll find out that what they cared about was, more than anything, that the people are in control. That, as the Declaration says, government exists at the consent of the governed. We, the people, as it says in the U.S. Constitution, are in control. we ultimately have the power. Article 1, Section 1 of the Missouri Constitution. In fact, I've got it on my other screen. I'm going to read it if you'll bear with me. It says, all political power is vested in and derived from the people, that all government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. So that's the fundamental principle of a republic. And right after acknowledging God as the supreme lawgiver of the universe, that's the first thing the people of Missouri have said in their constitution. And then the other thing that they say, right after defining the role of government in Article 1, Section 2, they say the right of the people of this state, the people of this state have the inherent and sole exclusive right to regulate the internal government and police thereof, and to alter or abolish their constitution and form of government whenever they deem it necessary to set to their safety and happiness. So that's another core principle of a republic. Having representatives make decisions for you is not a core principle of a republic. That's a mechanism through which a republic works. And so in the early 1900s, the people of Missouri enacted Article 3, Section 49, that says that the people reserve for themselves, that's a unique language in, I think, maybe our and every other constitution, our constitution and every other constitution, they reserve for themselves the power to amend their constitution independent of the legislature. Why is that? Because we are not just a republic, we are a constitutional republic. And a constitution is designed to be a wall around government. It's a fence around government. It's handcuffs, it's shackles. And the people have to be in control of those shackles. You don't shackle somebody or put a fence and a door and a gate and give them the key. The people have to hold the key. And so what they're trying to do with Amendment 4 is strip away the people's primary power for controlling government, for making sure that we, the people, are in control and that they exist only at the consent of the governed. It's stripping that away. And I'll tell you what, I find that very offensive. In fact, what's the other major thing that we have in the US Constitution and the Missouri Constitution to make sure that ultimately the people are in control? Obviously, it's the right to keep and bear arms. And again, that's been in my wheelhouse too. The Second
Are you
Amendment
working with Aaron Dorr on that?
I'm sorry?
Are you working with Aaron Dorr on that?
Well, actually, we started the Second Amendment Preservation Act movement in 2013. And so that was several years before the Missouri Firearms Coalition existed. And then it's a kind of a long story. We passed it in 2013, and maybe we can do a whole nother program on that. But we reinstituted it after some people termed out, and we had a path in 2020 again, and Aaron Dorr joined our effort.
Gotcha.
So we were the originators of
Primary.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
so Aaron was very helpful in getting it ultimately passed in 2021, but
Gotcha.
It was our project, is my point. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we recognize that the right to keep and bear arms is an important check on government's power. And I would suggest that the initiative petition process is similar to that. Now, people sometimes abuse that right to bear arms. Sometimes they do stupid things with firearms, or they use them illegally to intentionally harm other people. And guess what? Sometimes people do stupid things with the initiative petition process that ultimately hurt other people. But most conservatives that are watching this program aren't ready to confiscate guns. They're not ready to put undue restriction on that check we have on government, but they want to get rid of this other check on government that actually is more likely to be used. In fact, can you think of how many times have the people of the United States used their firearms to actually keep government in check? There was in Kentucky, the Battle of somebody can remind me what that was.
John Grady remembers everything.
Yeah. It was a local thing with an election irregularity, but then you could talk about the war between the states, I suppose, but really never, hardly ever, if ever, have we had to use our guns to keep government in check. The threat has been there, which I think has helped, but the initiative petition process has been used to keep government in check. You mentioned the Hancock Amendment in the last segment. That's an important one. There were term limits was another one. I'm a firm believer in term limits, and the more time I spend in the belly of the beast, the more likely I am. Okay, there you go. They found it. So,
Is this what you're
no, I'm
talking
not
about?
sure
I
that.
just
I'm
saw
not sure
this. This
that's.
is
I'm
kind
not
of
sure that's
crazy.
it. No, I'm not sure that
This was
this happened
surprising
back
too.
in. Yeah, this happened back in the 1940s or 50s. It was right
Oh,
after
okay.
World War II. The thing I'm
This was
talking
just
about.
very recent. That's kind of crazy to see as well, though.
Yeah. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we have had good stuff, important stuff like term limits, and then there were 2 tax limitation amendments that were passed recently. I know some of our best friends have tried to use the initiative petition process to do something about government schools and parents' rights and things like that. Things that the legislature is not stepping up to the plate to do. I'm incredibly disappointed that we didn't see more protections over liberty coming out of the whole COVID experience. I mean, we ended up with almost, virtually nothing
Amen.
to deal with that COVID experience. And, that's the kind of thing that we might ultimately need to do by IP. So my point is that this incredibly important check on government, that is the ability to build the fence around government taller without having to get permission from the legislature, that's on par with the right to bear arms. And we need to jealously guard both of those things. Now, let me take a breath because I've been talking too much.
I want to ask you a couple questions here, because the argument from the other side is that out of country money comes in and persuades people. This is and I don't buy this argument, but I'm telling you, the biggest argument that I get is that with Amendment 4, which is the initiative petition process, and we probably should back up just a minute. This is where the citizens have the right to override anything with the government. They can put an amendment on there. Citizens right now, 5 out of the 8 voting districts, if they vote in favor of it, 50 plus 1 in those 5 out of 8, they can put something in. I guess it goes on the ballot then, and then we vote on it, right? But it allows the citizen to bypass the General Assembly and get things onto the ballot to be voted on, right? It's really where you say, wait a minute, an oligarchy system is in place. You have big money that is controlling the legislature. We as citizens don't like what's going on there. We want to put something on the ballot. We want to vote on it, right? Now they want it to be 8 out of 8. And the argument that they're using is that money is coming in from out of the country to sway voters. And that is why we have marijuana. That's why we have the most liberal abortion policies in Missouri, is because of a abused IP system. That's the argument. I look at that and say, wait a minute, hang on here just a minute. Why would it be any different for the people than the General Assembly? Because basically what they're saying is we can be misled and we can be bought off through out-of-state money, but that they can't. They are the adults in the room, and they only need a majority, but we need all 8 voting districts to get involved. Do you see it that way? I see it as
absolutely.
I see it as almost destroying the IP process if you go 8 for 8, because I don't trust the elections either, Ron. That's just me. But if you go 8 for 8, now all of a sudden you're basically just saying we don't have an IP process, as far as I can tell, unless they want to institute slavery again or something. I mean, outside of that, you're never going to get anything to go through all 8 voting counties or all 8 voting districts. So you're basically just taking it away from the citizens, and you're going to take that power and give it to the legislature, which I think, based on what I'm seeing, they're just they're much more likely to get bought off than the citizens. How do you see it?
Well, no, that's exactly right. And so what I was trying to do is I was trying to make the case for the people's power to act independent of the legislature. So that's kind of question 1 to ask. If you don't believe in the initiative petition process, then it's kind of easy to accept the double standard that you're talking about, because you don't think there should even be this citizen option. But no, you're exactly right. And so one of the things that really frustrates me, Rob, is that we have the people that are pushing this that have been saying it's too easy to amend the Missouri Constitution, and it should take more than a simple majority. And that right now we have the urban areas that can amend the Constitution. You take the votes from Kansas City and St. Louis, sprinkle in some from Columbia, which, by the way, kind of looks like the East Coast, California, and Chicago, right?
Right.
When you look at the maps. And that's where you can get the 50% plus 1. Well, guess what? I think I was the first one at the Capitol that started talking about that. Back in 2022, we introduced the concept of concurrent majority ratification. So I've got an op-ed that's coming out that'll be probably in some of the papers today or in the next couple of days. in which I start out, I say, Amendment 4 was my idea, and I'm voting no. And then I go on to say, well, actually, they took my idea and they adulterated it and turned it into Amendment 4. And so that's because I worked with Representative Bill Kidd in 2022. He had HJR, I think it was 163 that he filed that year. And it was basically what we see in Amendment 4 with two major differences, maybe three major differences. The first one is it applied to all constitutional amendments, whether the legislature proposed them or they were proposed by initiative petition, or Rob, something nobody's talking about, an amendment proposed by a constitutional convention, which right now takes a simple majority vote to pass, or a whole new constitution can be adopted with a simple majority vote. So Kansas City, St. Louis, and Columbia can adopt a whole new constitution and leave the rest of the state out of it. So Amendment 4 doesn't do anything about a convention or legislative proposed amendment. So that's major difference number one. Major difference number two is, rather than this impossible standard that they would never adopt for themselves, the legislature would never want to have to get 8 out of 8 congressional districts to all vote individually a majority yes vote. It would require more than half of the state House districts. So there's 163 House districts. You'd have to get more than half of them. And so that would require a broad geographic consensus. It would give rural people more vote and not just run rough. You wouldn't see the tyranny of the urban majority that you would otherwise. Some people thought it should be congressional districts instead of House districts. We pointed out, if you do that, then Republicans have to decide, do they want 7 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 8 congressional districts to be Republican, or do they want strong protections for the Constitution? Because to get 7 of 8 or 8 of 8, you have to water down those districts, right?
Right.
You have to, and so it would be easier for you to get 8 of 8 to accept something that was more progressive or more left. So that's when they decided that they were going to make it 8 of 8, and they were going to get rid of leave the legislature out of it. Anyway, it's a long story. But so those were the two differences. It was going to be achievable with Representative Kidd's HJR, and it was going to apply to everybody equally, which is the only way to keep things fair. So, I've been on the ground floor of that. I've been the one that started publishing the maps showing the difference. And I think maybe I sent you all a link, so people can download this. This is what we've been handing out, and you can see it shows the urban rural divide. Everybody's familiar with that kind of concept now.
Isaiah, real fast, Isaiah, do you have that?
One more time.
Do you have that, what he just showed right there? Because if you don't, I'd like to have it just in general so I can look at it.
Can you show it again?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I sent links to it. That one.
All right. Let's see. Which one is that labeled under?
Oh, that would be, let me look at my email I sent to you real quick.
Yeah, because I'm interested in the information that you have out there. This is, and I just, as you're looking for it,
That's
one
CMR booklet.
CMR booklet. One of the things I was going to ask you, Ron, just in the interim here, is it appears to me there's a lot of money coming into the Republican Party to push for A4 and A5. Do you have any understanding of how the whole system works? I love to look at systems and how these things work, and I see a lot of really good people pushing for A4 and A5, but you can't really have a conversation with them. It's like they're salesmen for these issues. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? They don't even respond to any of these questions. They just continue to push A4 and 5. I see these commentary on social media all over the place. And it starts to make me wonder. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If we're not arguing in good faith, if we're not having a conversation in good faith, are you really contemplating the differences of what's going to happen with A4? Or are you being incentivized to push A4? Do you understand how the system works? I don't. I honestly don't. I just get these feelings, and I don't want to put motives where there aren't any. But it's just odd to me that people won't even have a conversation with you. It's like, no, A4, A4, A4. Here's why A4, A4. And I go, wait a minute. What do you think of this? And they don't respond. And then the next day I'll see them A4, A4, A4. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you pushing this because there's an incentive for you, or is there a real conversation to be had here? Because they don't want to have a conversation. It doesn't appear to me. Do you have any sense of that, or am I,
Well, let's say you work for Pfizer, and you are on some kind of a panel discussing the COVID jab. Are you going to be objective?
Exactly.
So, I'm afraid even a lot of our friends that we are typically allied with right now, they're on somebody's payroll, and they're pushing Amendment 4, Amendment 5, and
Okay.
so that's
That's
part of
my,
it.
that's my take. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Yeah.
crazy because I didn't know that.
But the other thing,
but
is and the reason I started out talking about what is a republic, I think that on the other hand, you've got some people that just have a fundamental misunderstanding about what it is to be a republic or a constitutional republic. By the way, that island south of Florida, about 90 miles off Florida's coast, you know what that is? It's
Cuba.
the Republic of Cuba. Cuba is a republic. So what does that mean? It means nothing if you don't have the Constitution to back it up.
That's right.
And the rule of law prevailing. And the people have to have a way of enforcing their constitution, enforcing their rule of law.
Well, I'm on the same page. So as you see it now, you'd be an absolute no on 4. Obviously, you're putting articles out that where you're against A4. Can I pick your brain about some other things just in general with Missouri politics?
You can, but let me just interject this one other thing.
We're not done. Go ahead.
This ties into what Ray was saying about trust. So he's been around there. He's been at the Capitol longer than I have.
Yes.
I'm not far behind him, but he's been there longer. It is a matter of trust. So the fact of the matter is that we see all kinds of shenanigans, including with the HJR that became Amendment 4. We see a special session called, or an extraordinary session called by the governor. And so at an odd time when a lot of people aren't there, citizens aren't there to advocate for good policy. And then we see something ramrodded through. Do you realize, Rob, that Amendment 4, the double standard amendment that's going to give the legislature an easier path to amend the Constitution than the people have? Do you realize that it didn't get 1 second of debate on the Senate floor?
I do know that.
Not 1 second. It was PQ'd. There was no debate. And so when we ask some of our friends, and maybe not so friendly friends, how can you justify the double standard? They'll say, well, the legislative process is deliberative. And in the legislative process, you don't have some guy sitting at his kitchen table writing up an amendment. Well, the fact of the matter is, and they'll say the legislative process is one in which you don't have all this foreign influence. Well, now, wait a minute. Let's back up to your discussion earlier. Where's all the money for Amendment 5 coming from?
Delaware.
Most of it's coming from out of state.
Mm-hmm.
The very thing that they're complaining about, the IP process being funded, how it's being funded. So my point is that even with Amendment 4, we saw a profane legislative process. They'll say nothing bad's going to happen when the Democrats take control of the legislature because the Senate has the filibuster. Well, how did that work with Amendment 4 itself? They PQ'd it. There was no filibuster. There was no filibuster opportunity. They didn't even, the bill barely got to the floor, and they had to take a vote on it. So, I'm also informed by the many years I've been fighting against these single subject bills. Talk to Mike Moon. He'll tell you that privately, legislators will come to him and they'll say, I know you're right. We should be voting no on these single subject bills, but this is what we have to work with. So rather than standing up for the Constitution, they just play the game. And so why should we think it's going to be any different in the future? No, I don't trust the current legislature with Amendment 4 or Amendment 5, by the way. And I don't even know who's going to be in the legislature 5 or 10 or 50 years from now. And so, yes, I want to make sure I stay armed. And I want to stay armed with firearms, and I want to stay armed with the initiative petition process.
Boy, your logic makes a lot of sense to me, Ron. It's the arguments that we've been making on the show, and it's so nice to hear somebody who's embedded into the process for such a long time kind of share the same
in the belly of the beast, I'm afraid.
In the belly of the beast. And that's kind of what I was going to ask you, because I'm new to state politics. I'm a novice to it. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. I do start to get a sense of what's happening in here from a big picture standpoint. And what I started to recognize right away was you don't really have a traditional Republican Party in Missouri. And I don't know if it's in all the states, but you don't really have a traditional Republican Party the way I perceived it to be, right? And you made a commentary earlier. You said there's a lot of people that put R in front of their name that aren't really Republicans the way we would understand it. And that is why I'm so distrustful of what's going on in Jefferson City. It feels to me like the Republican Party has been infiltrated. And privately, there are people that will talk to me and say, yeah, Rob, I mean, I don't know whether they're Democrats, corporatists, if they're just paid shills or what they are. but they get financed, they get into a position of power in the General Assembly, and we don't really, there's not much we can do. I mean, they're just in there, which would again um, um, go back to Amendment 4, because you're asking these people that are running as Republicans. You know, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, I don't think she's a Republican, right? I don't think she runs as a Republican, but I don't think she's a Republican. So you have these people that are embedded into the Republican Party, to where Republican voters see a supermajority and they would anticipate that you're going to get conservative legislation out of Jefferson City. I don't see any. I don't see any coming out of Jefferson City. I'm like, well, how can you have a supermajority when there's really not much conservative legislation coming out of our General Assembly? Do you think that it has been infiltrated by, and I don't want to say Democrats, but just infiltrated by people that don't share a traditional Republican value system, that now have control of the power in Jefferson City? And that's why you really, grassroots people are just pulling their hair out going, we just never get anything done of consequence because we can't influence the right people because they're not on our side to begin with. How do you take that argument?
I know it's hard to say whether an individual is Republican or Democrat at heart. I suppose you can look at the policy. Two things I think you need to understand is, number one, the Republican or the legislature of Missouri is very top down in power structure. So if you are a typical rep in the House of Representatives, you're nothing more than a rubber stamp.
Agreed.
The speaker and the floor leader have 90%, maybe more percent of the power. The next 8% of the power goes to chairman of committees, and then 2% is spread among all the other 100 some odd legislators. So I actually think that the supermajority has hurt the true constitutional conservatives. Back when Republicans had a bare majority, which is, again, I was there for the transition. The true conservatives actually had more power because they needed all of the Republicans to work together. And now you get the true conservatives, you get the people that are really there to uphold the Constitution, like the Mike Moons and the Bryant Wolfens, by the way.
My favorites.
They're marginalized. Their votes aren't needed. And so that top-down power structure is a big problem. The other thing is what I think is dumbing down what it is to be a Republican or a conservative or even a constitutional conservative. You mentioned the word corporatist a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the fundamental problem that we have. In the old days, they called it mercantilism.
Right.
In fact, I would maintain that the war we fought against King George was a war between mercantilism and capitalism. And capitalism was the view of the founders, and not all of them understood it. Mercantilism is what gave rise to things like the East India Trading Company, and and all of the other stuff going on. That's where you get the Stamp Act. That's where you get the the Pine Act and the Molasses Act and all those kind of things. All of that was British mercantilism, where government sword was used to benefit private parties. Kind of like when you pass a bill that will use public money to fund the private headquarters of sports franchises,
right.
in Kansas
And it was
City.
completely unconstitutional, Ron. And when I was doing my radio show, we said this is unconstitutional. I had guests on. I said, this is unconstitutional. This is multi-subject. This will never pass muster. And they still passed it anyway. And to me, it's like, well, you already know it's not constitutional. What are you doing? And they passed
Well, that's
it anyway.
one of the lawsuits we have in court right now. So we're in the Supreme Court with that lawsuit right now. So the Article 3 Institute.
Yep.
So I think between when you have a supermajority, when there's basically only one train to get on, everybody's going to try to get on that train, and so I would suggest that there probably are some people who would have just as well run as a Democrat if the Democrats had the supermajority, and now they're running as Republicans. I'm not going to try to name names or point fingers, but you kind of only need the people in leadership to, number one, either be in favor of a progressive or a mercantilist or corporatist agenda, or Republicans that just don't understand the principles of free market systems and capitalism or constitutional government, and put them in power, and then they can lead all the rest of them along.
Boy, it's exactly how I see it. I got to ask you a question because you mentioned it. You talked about the power structure. This is the argument I've been making since I started to understand what was happening. When they made John Patterson the Speaker of the House, I went down there because I was friendly with Justin Sparks. He explained to me the system. And I said, well, that's kind of crazy. And Justin Sparks agreed with me. And I said, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll use the radio show. I'll bring people down when they are going to vote for Speaker of the House, so they can witness it. So we'll have witnesses that can go out and say, look, this is what's going on in your state government. And John Patterson, who, I don't know whether John Patterson's a good guy or a bad guy. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm just saying he doesn't seem like a traditional conservative when he says we're going to put a sunset on the transgender issue, right? So we're going to sunset that. During COVID, he said if you did not get vaccinated, you should not have transplant surgery, which I had an uncle die who couldn't get a liver transplant at that time. So it was very personal for me. So I look at these things and I say, wait a minute, why would you make that guy your leader? Now we have Alex Riley, who's already announced. He hasn't even won his election, Ron. And he comes out onto social media and says, I'm going to be the next Speaker of the House. So they're picking the Speaker of the House in advance. So when you say corporatism, that's the only thing that would make any sense to me. Now, that's really what the question I'm going to ask you is, why would they pick the most powerful person in the House of Representatives in advance if it wasn't to protect business interest? It doesn't make any sense other than that. Am I crazy, or is that really what this is about? Is you got contracts, you're allocating $50 billion every year? Missouri Inc. is what I like to call it. The only reason to pick your speaker isn't because the speaker is a bad person, but now you have all your handshake deals, you have everything going on, you know who your committee members are going to be, you know who's going to run these committees, and all of a sudden you've got Missouri Inc. right out in front of your face, and you remind the Republican Party that doesn't make a lot of sense, and they don't care at all, from what I can tell. Am I getting that wrong? How do you see it?
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head pretty solidly. Isaiah, can you put mofirst.org up on?
Absolutely.
So at the very top of the screen, when you go to mofirst.org, you'll see, click here for the legislative reform plan. And it explains a lot of the stuff right there on top in blue. So if you click through that, you'll see a plan that we developed several years ago to try to get rid of this top-down power structure and try to spread the power among all of the people that are representative.
You actually have a plan.
We think in the House that each rep should have 1/163rd of the power, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And in the Senate, each senator should have 1/34th of the power.
Yes, sir.
And that leadership, like the speaker or the president pro tem or the floor leaders or committee chairman, they should be facilitators, making sure that everybody shares in that power. And not because I'm concerned about a rep or a senator having power, but because I'm concerned about the people that they represent back home having their fair share of the power. And so that's not what happens right now. So this document explains what the problem is. And then toward the end of the document, what we think is at least one of the viable solutions for the problem. But the reason I think that they elect the speaker in advance, by the way, I have to stop and say this. In August, there will be a primary. And in November, there will be a general election. That's when, roughly a third of the reps and half or so of the senators' seats are open. And no, I'm sorry, all of the rep seats are open. But typically we have 25 to 30% turnover because they're getting termed out.
Right.
Those new reps don't get to vote on speaker.
Right. They do, but they don't.
Vote on the speaker.
They do, but they don't. Right. It's already the game has already been determined. Right. They can come in like Bryant Wolfin or some of these people that voted for Justin Sparks. But what was crazy to me, Ron, I don't know if you were there that day, when Justin Sparks put his name in the hat for Speaker of the House. The way they overrode it was they had the Democrats join the Republicans. I thought, well, isn't this wonderful? So the Democrats came to the defense of John Patterson, kind of squashed everything right there. And then all of a sudden, John Patterson got up and he took his oath, which said, we're going to keep the secrets of the House. So help me God. And I'm like, what secrets of the House? What's that? So I look at the whole thing and I'm like, something's going on here. This doesn't make a lot of sense. And then I always say, Ron, if it doesn't make sense, it kind of does make sense. It doesn't make sense because
you're not, and along with follow the money trail and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that the speaker is pre-elected, because that gives him, he's elected a year and a half in advance. So he's the target for the donations. And so a lot of money flows into the hands of the speaker, which is sometimes maybe used selfishly if it's somebody like a John Deal. I really like Alex Riley. I think that he's going to
good things about him. Yep.
One of the best speakers that we've got. I think he's honest, and I think that he would do things fairly. If Alex was smart, he would use his 2 years as speaker to depower the speaker and spread the power among all the rest of them. So he would use that 2 years to overturn the money collectors in the temple, at their table.
Yes.
And make a change that would outlast the 2 years that he would otherwise spend running the show.
It's interesting you say that, because some people that I admire, that I'm friendly with in the Republican Party, say the exact same thing about Alex Riley. And I thought, well, that's good news. I mean, if you're moving in that direction to where you want to disperse power, I'm down with it. Because right now, it feels like power is very consolidated, and I don't think that's a good thing for Missouri voters or Missouri citizens in general. If you disperse that power and give some say back to voters, that would be a good thing for Missouri politics. And I hope you're right. I have heard the same exact thing about. I don't know Alex Riley. Apparently, you do. I don't know him, but I heard the same things about him. So that's if there's something to get excited about, that would be one issue that we could agree would be good for the state.
So you just mentioned another core principle behind an American constitutional republic, and that is diffuse distributed powers.
Right.
The last thing we wanted, the founders wanted, was all the power in the hands of a few oligarchs or a king. And that's why it's we the people. And when you have the pro tem and the speaker and the floor leaders of the House and the Senate with the vast majority of the power, you don't have we the people in charge. You don't have that distributed power. So Alex's his legacy could be, if he'll choose to do it, to upset that apple cart and get rid of the top-down power structure. Reinvent the speaker.
Yeah, I learned a lot today. Friend, you and I are on the exact same page with pretty much all of these issues. I would like to stay in contact with you. So if you have information that you want to get out, first of all, I'm going to look through your plan for Speaker of the House, because I'm very interested in what you've got there. I've been screaming and yelling about this since I found out about it. And I don't have a plan. I'm not smart enough to have a plan. That's why I need people like Ron Calzone. But I want to look at your plan, because I think that would be a great thing for the Republican Party. It basically putting the way I would look at it, Ron, and you tell me if I'm crazy here too, and this is the last thing I'll ask you. Don't you think it would be good for the Republican Party to show the voters of Missouri that they're going to take away some of their own power? Isn't it a good thing when you say, listen, we don't need this consolidation of power is not good. We don't know who's going to be next. We don't know how this is going to play out. We need to disperse this power. That's, as you say, what the Constitution is all about. I think it'd be a great look for the Republican Party. I think it'd gain a lot of confidence with especially people in the grassroots like you and I.
It absolutely would. I've made that pitch before. When Cindy O'Loughlin took over the floor leader, I spent a lot of time with Cindy, and I tried to channel her that direction to no avail. There was somebody running for the Speaker of the House years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I won't mention his name. Really a good guy. And I pointed out, I said, if you want to lock in, this was a year and a half before he would be Speaker. If you want to lock in this election, then why don't you run on getting rid of the Rules Committee, which was one of the Speaker's ways of controlling the process. And he kind of looked up at the ceiling and he said, oh, but I might need the Rules Committee as if I'm elected Speaker. He didn't get elected. He could have got elected Speaker and had less power. So I think, and I've talked to Alex about this, and I will talk more to Alex about this. I will get brushed off, I'm sure, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to say, Alex, your legacy could be reinventing the Speaker's office and getting it back more into the principles of what America was founded on.
Just remind him greatness takes a little bit of courage, because it would be courage, because he's not going to get a lot of love from the donor class, which, they have a lot of power. But sometimes in order to do great things,
but it would be national news.
Exactly.
It would be national news.
I talked to a guy named Paul Renner. He was the former Speaker of the House in Florida. I go back and forth between Florida and St. Louis. My family and I lived here for 50 years. My wife, when we started dating again, she was from Missouri. She lives in Florida. So I now go back and forth between Florida and Missouri, and I'm heavily involved in Florida politics as well. So I had the Speaker of the House, Paul Renner, on my show, and I explained to him what goes on in Missouri. He goes, Rob, that's what happened in Florida until I stopped it.
Good for
he
him.
Stopped it.
Wow.
And now he's running for governor. So he had the same situation, at least what he said on my show. He goes, we had the same process in Florida until I stopped it. And, I keep bringing this up to my Republican friends, and I say, listen, if you don't want the grassroots to constantly be poking you in the eye and aggravating you and getting after you, then reach out to them and say, listen, we understand where you're coming from. Here are the things that we would like to do in order to make change so that you have a voice in your government again. And then all of a sudden you'll stop having all these, because we drive them crazy. I mean, I don't know if you do, but we drive these people crazy because we don't think we're being heard. So we just get louder and louder and more obnoxious as we go along here. And it turns a lot of them off. The good ones continue to talk to us, and they say, we hear where you're coming from. They say it privately for the most part. They don't want to get themselves in trouble with the party. But I come from the same angle as you. I think if you disperse power, if you return power back to the people, that's what our government should be wanting to have happen. But it's hard to give up power, Ron. It just is. It's hard to give up power.
I will say this, because I think probably, I think I know your constituency. Obnoxious doesn't work.
I know.
It
I
really
agree
doesn't
with you.
work.
I agree with you. I argue with
Reason
people in my own
can
organization.
work.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. I argue with people in my own organization. I say, you know what? But the problem with when you get too obnoxious is even the people that agree with you, there's something in the inner side of them that goes, I don't want to be associated with that. And then it turns them off to paying attention to what you have to say. I agree 100%. I think you have to be professional. You have to be persistent. You have to point out the differences. And then hopefully you can gain the hearts and minds of people to start a movement. You need a movement of people that understand what's going on in your state.
I read this today in my Bible, actually. Proverbs.
Isaiah knows we agree, don't we, Isaiah? We talk about
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time. We wish some people that are associated with us would just take a straighter path, but
This is, Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
There you go. Hey, we should put that on the front of the People's Lobby Missouri website. Yeah. Ron Calzone, thank you so much for your time, friend. I'm going to be in touch with. Do we have his number, Isaiah?
Yep, I just group texted you with him.
I'll be in touch with you. I want to donate to what you got going on there because I think we're on the same page. I want to read your recommendation for the Speaker of the House. We'll get that onto the show here before too terribly long, and hope to work together with your friend. It sounds like we're on the same page.
Sure. Call me offline sometime and we can kind of compare notes.
Yeah, we'd also love to have you contribute. We're starting to post articles on our new website. We'd also love to have you contribute there as well, sir.
Yeah, we'll link it to you at the very least. So if you have something going on that you think is important, we'll link it so more people see it.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate it.
Ron Calzone, everybody. He is the founder of Missouri First Inc. I think you should check out his website. Very enlightening day, Isaiah. Very enlightening. I like him. And it's funny when we have smart people on. I love smart people. I do. I love smart people. I
learn so much.
I'm that's the best way to describe me. I am I'm not a dumb person. I'm a smart person. But there are people that just really dig in and can get into details. My mind is, I'm a little bit scatterbrained at times. I take in information very quickly. I digest it and I spit it out. And then there are people that can go into something. They can read 100 pages. They can read it 2 or 3 times. They have the discipline and the patience to really, really, really understand things. And I'm too lazy to do that. So what I end up doing is I find people that really dig into the information, and it's like cheating on a test. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what the answers are, but I'd rather you get them because you've done all the homework, and that's what Ron Calzone was, and that's the way that Mr. McCarty was. That's the way Jen and Allie are. So I appreciate all of the time and energy everybody spent on the show today. Very enlightening.
And speaking of the amendments, since this is, it's all Missouri politics we've been talking about today, something that I don't know if I mentioned this, but when I was speaking with Representative Davidson and Senator Brown at the Mose meeting, something I got to bring up to them as we were walking out, and they kind of were caught off guard by this, I could tell. And they didn't have a good answer for this question. And so I'd encourage everyone to ask anyone that you're talking with or engaging with that's an elected official or running to be elected about this as well. Because if you go to the Secretary of State's website, Denny Hoskins does a great job. His team does a great job of putting together these ballot measures. And have you ever looked at this, Rob, of the kind of the summary texts and then what a yes or a no vote does for each of these, like an amendment or anything that they're putting on the ballot? Have you ever looked at these?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So they're not a lot of people are familiar with them, but they're super informative. And this is what I was talking about when they had to change the language because it was misleading on the ballot language. And so for Amendment 5, they were required to change their language. That's beside the point. The main point here is if you go down to Amendment 5 here, right? This is from Secretary of State's website. So he gives you the full text of the bill, the certificate, everything. So you can know it's an official, right, amendment. Everything. They did everything to get it on the ballot. And then they put the official language here, a yes vote, a no vote. But right here, what does this say? What does that say right there, Rob?
At this time, the impact on taxes is unknown.
But if you go to the other amendment, this is Amendment 4. What does it say?
If passed, the measure will not increase or decrease taxes. Isn't that something?
So why, if it's a revenue neutral bill, right? If it's not going to raise taxes, why did the Secretary of State not put that on the ballot?
That's really good.
Why did he say it's unknown? They did not have a good answer, Rob, and they were very caught off guard. They did not even know. I had to pull it up on my phone and show them that it said that, and they were kind of taken aback that it said that.
I gotta give you one more because you educated me again today. This is what I like about you, Isaiah. I do. I got to give you credit where credit is deserved. I had several different people texting me last night information. I got a whole research staff of people that listen to the show, right? And I absolutely
I'm getting texts while we're on the air about stuff. I get it.
Exactly. And I don't respond to everyone. I just want you to know that I sometimes don't get to text messages until 2 or 3 days later. There's just only so much time in the day, right? Like I said, sometimes we do a 3 or 4 hour show. We study for 3 hours to put on the show. All the night, the day before.
Go to an event, maybe.
Yeah, we go to events. We're looking at information. At some point, you want to have a life, right? So you can't get to everybody, but I read every single one of them. People send me information. I mean, just crazy amounts of information that I'm trying to digest on a daily basis. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days to get back to them. But one of the things that was going on yesterday, and my buddy just sent it to my buddy Jeff just sent this to me just now as we were talking. He said, breaking, the Senate voted against the NDAA 50 to 46, denying Israel a merger with the U.S.
Yeah.
Those 46 who voted in favor should face charges of treason, right? So I got a lot of people sending me that yesterday. As soon as we got on this morning, as soon as we were prepping for the show, you go, Rob, did you see this? Because there's two sides to this story, even because we've been complaining about it. You know how we feel about Israel. If you listen to the show every day, we don't like what's going on. We don't like the merger. We think it is we think it is treasonous to even suggest that we share technology with a foreign country. It does not have to do with Israel, just any foreign country. I don't want to share.
We don't have this. We don't have this agreement with any country right now.
You could steal the election in Israel and you could have some crazy person take over Israel and we're sharing technology with them. That's why you don't want to do that, right? So we just think it's insane. Even the concept is insane. But a lot of people were very excited yesterday because they believe that this deal got voted down. I'll read this to you one more time. Breaking, the Senate voted against the NDAA 50 to 46, denying Israel a merger with the U.S. Those 46 who voted in favor should face treason charges. Okay, so this was all over social media, all over the internet yesterday. But then I got people sending me the exact opposite information. Jake Jackson from People's Lobby, Missouri actually sent me information to the opposite. How is the story shaping up the way you understand it?
So from my understanding so far as of this morning, this is what I had told Rob, is my understanding as it is that the Senate did vote down the NDAA as it is. The issue that we have now to overcome is that simultaneously on the same day yesterday, the House attached, it's called merged, they merged the SAVE Act with the NDAA and then passed that. And so I'm not smart enough. I'm not a legislature. I'm not a representative. You know, I mean,
what's going on is what you're saying.
When we were talking to Thomas Massey in there, he had to talk to his aides to figure out, you know, what can we do here? What can we not do here? Right. So I'm not smart enough to tell you what's going to happen because of that. But I am smart enough to know that when something passes in the House, then it advances to the Senate again. And so if the Senate just voted down the NDAA, but now the House just passed something new where they've attached the Save America Act, voter ID laws, to merging our military with Israel. Now we are going to get something in the Senate that they're going to, now we have to say, oh, do you want voter IDs? Okay, well, you're going to have to merge with Israel then.
You know what's funny? Tim Burchett from Tennessee. This was probably 6 months ago. I played the clip on the show. He said that's exactly what would happen. He said, if you want to get the SAVE Act passed, they're going to attach something to it that you hate. And that's the way this is going to go down. So what you're describing is what Tim Burchett said. But we played a clip when it happened. This is months ago that he said that.
Oh, yeah.
Here we are.
And him and Luna were the two that were against it. I have an article here from The Hill. Him and Luna were the ones that were voting against it before the July 4th recess. And so, you know, through their backroom conversations, essentially is what it says, then they were brought into the fold and they were convinced to vote for it. And that's why it passed. I will say Thomas Massey, he's always standing out, right? He's always standing out. Thomas Massey is revived an effort, and this is an article that I pulled from military.com, I think, because I couldn't find it on any other website yesterday. But Massey has revived the effort to strip Section 219 from the NDAA. So lots of stuff happening yesterday with the National Defense Authorization Act and Section 219 specifically, where Senate voted it down, House attached it to the SAVE Act, they pass it, and simultaneously Massey's trying to get Section 219 ripped out of it. I don't think Massey will be successful with that, since his just looking at his campaign, you know what I mean, and everything that's against him right now.
Can we
did you see that they're running ads against Massey even after his campaign because of this?
Yeah.
So pro-Israel lobbies are running ads against this because
that's what I was gonna say. If we can get a hold of his chief of staff,
and
see if they can kind of keep us.
I think you have his card. I'm looking at my card.
You have it somewhere, but if we can find it, we should probably get a hold of his chief of staff, Massey's chief of staff, because you made friends with him. You made friends with the entire
Matt.
office.
I think Matt is his
They're out
name.
there charming the pants off of everybody in Washington, D.C. that day. Very impressive. But if we can get a hold of them, just say, hey, what's going on with this? We know Thomas Massey's trying to block it. Can you keep us informed as to what's going on? Because we want to keep our audience informed, because it seems relatively convoluted now. Right?
Yeah.
Multiple bills. Nobody really understands what's going on. I got.
And they're putting bills together now, which
That's
also
two opposing ideas. I had half the people saying, "Can you believe they're doing this?" And then the other half said, "Oh, great news!" I'm like, "Wait a minute!" I've been two from very smart.
it is great news on one end, but then once you find out, oh, what happens the same day, it's gonna happen. You know, they're gonna have to vote on it again. And now they're saying, John Thune, if you don't vote for this, you're the reason that the Save America Act didn't pass.
That's how they do
all
it.
on you.
That's
and
how
so,
they
that's
how they do it. This is how they do it. Okay.
All right, can you tell I'm passionate about this issue, Rob?
We're gonna get ourselves in trouble. Everybody thinks that we're haters. I'm like, I'm not haters. I just love the country, and I think we're making.
If this was the UK, if this was England, if this was Italy, if this was Australia, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. That's what people don't seem to be able to wrap their brains around. But we keep trying. All right, let's get a little bit more advertising done today, and then we'll call it a day.
Let's do it.
Let's start with RAK, R-A-K Custom Coatings. Again, as the show begins to conclude, I just want to remind everybody of our very loyal advertisers, RAKCustomCoatings.com. I'm getting ready to go have lunch with my man, Rich McQuay.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
Yep, he reached out to me and said, you can come with us, but it's a little further.
I got to watch.
It's a bit of a ways for you. But he said, Rob, I want to advertise with you. I've been listening to the show. I like what you guys get done. And I have a business I think would be able to, we'd be able to get more information about our business. It's been around since 2001. It's RAKCustomCoatings.com. He sent me pictures of his flooring. And I said, oh yeah, I know all about that. I had it done in my garage and I absolutely loved it. So it was a marriage made in heaven right away. Mm-hmm. Rich McQuay, again, locally owned and operated, family owned since 2001. As he says, this is what he wrote out for me. He said, Rob, we install industrial strength, long-lasting coatings built to handle anything your home or business can throw at them. And I love that picture right there. First of all, I love that car. From garages to commercial spaces, RAK, R-A-K, Custom Coatings delivers tough, beautiful finishes that last. If you want to get a hold of RAK Custom Coatings and our friend Rich McQuay, it is 636-398-5040. Always easier to remember the .coms if you ask me. RAKCustomCoatings.com. RAKCustomCoatings.com. If you are somebody who makes decisions on flooring, right? Flooring for schools, flooring for hangars, flooring for any kind of industrial space and or your own garage. And like I said, I did it for my garage. Loved it. Let's say that you just showed a picture. Let's say you have a bathroom in your in your business. And the bathroom flooring doesn't look very good. You're like, I'd like to replace that flooring. You can go get tile. You can go get wood. It's going to cost you a fortune. If you do what RAK Custom Coatings does, epoxy, it's less expensive. It looks absolutely fantastic. As you saw in that picture, you can make it look like tile. It's tough. It's durable. It's inexpensive. And as far as flooring is concerned, and you'll be doing business with good people that support the show. Rich McQuay, RAKCustomCoatings.com. Again, locally owned and operated since 2001. If you want to give them a call, it's 636-398-5040. Look at that flooring, spectacular. RAKCustomCoatings.com. And then I got to give a shout out to EXP Realty. Did you see Debbie had a house sold yesterday?
I did.
Rock and roll. She said, Rob, in the last 2 weeks, we've had 6 listings. She was all excited. EXP Realty, Debbie Genus. This is the person we chose to sell homes for you. So if you're buying a home, if you're selling a home, go with somebody who's been around for a long time, 28 years selling real estate through the
Where can she operate? Do you know where she in all the St. Louis areas?
You set me up, Florida, Illinois, and Missouri.
Wow.
I got to remember that. Let me just put that here real fast because I continue to forget.
That's great to know.
Yep.
My wife is already she's already trying to find another house.
Is she?
Well, we have 2 kids already. I'm going for 3 right now. You know what I mean?
Yes, I get it. There's a little more space, a little less crying right in her ear. I got it.
Yeah.
Debbie Genus, Florida, Missouri, and Illinois. If you're buying or selling a home, she is the one we choose. 28 years as a realtor, 14 years in the insurance game. Go with somebody you can trust. Go with somebody who has a track record. Debbie Genus, 314-482-9205. If you want to go to her website, it is Deborah.Genus, Jeanis. You can see it on the screen there. Deborah.Jeanis, Deborah Genus at exprealty.com. Again, if it's time for a home, if it's time to sell it or buy it, it is Deborah or Debbie Genus. And then I got to give a shout out to my man, John Grady, who has been working his tail off. He's trying to get elected out there.
Yes. I also, before we talk about Slap Happy Hemp, just want to read something from John that I think is very important. And I'm so sad that we did not get him on the show today. But I told him I would talk to you about getting him on tomorrow just to talk about what happens, because today, if everyone can call their congressman, they are voting on the TCAVA. It's a veterans.
Oh yeah, that's a big deal to him.
Yeah, and after hearing about it, it's a big deal to me just because I care about our veterans.
Tell John I want on tomorrow.
Yeah, I want to. It stands for Take Care of Americans Veterans Act. That's what it's called.
Yeah, he's really
in
upset.
the Take Care of Americans Veterans Act. They're going to be taking away.
He's upset with.
Yeah, $57 billion, Rob. They're taking away $57 billion from veterans and their families, while simultaneously we send how much to Ukraine, how much to Israel.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That upsets me. You know, that's my uncle and aunt who raised me took me out of foster care before I got adopted. He was a chief warrant officer in the Army. I saw him get deployed multiple times. And you know, it's hard. You know, the income is lower. He was in the National Guard, so he wasn't in active duty. So he's working as he's working for not TWA. They had changed it, American Airlines, right? He was a manager of the guys that worked on all the flight simulators. So
John was in Iraq.
Yeah. And he was in Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these places. He got deployed like 3 or 4 times while we were there. And it was so hard on the family. Financially, I'm talking about too, because they're not making that much. The soldiers don't make that much money. And
John was in Iraq, comes home, opens up a hemp business. He sells hemp products, and then the state of Missouri takes his business away from him. His business. That's why he said, Rob, you know what? I'm going to have hemp products for sale. I got to move these hemp products because my business, as I understand it, will be gone in November. That's why we, he'll have a new business, and we'll talk about his new business when he comes on. And I'm hoping he gets elected. I'd like to see John Grady.
Yes.
There's a few people that I'm going to endorse. He's probably one of them. I got to talk to him just a little bit more about certain things, but he's a guy that I think is right on the same page. I think he sees the government for what it is, and he's supposed to limit their powers and give it back to the citizens. That's what he wants to do. That's my kind of guy. If you're interested in hemp products, if you're somebody who buys hemp products, it's slaphappyhemp.com. Slaphappyhemp.com. You can reach him at 636-388-8771. Hopefully we'll do a show out there before too terribly long. He's on Highway 50 in Rosebud. What a beautiful, beautiful drive. If you want to take a little time for you and maybe the husband or wife, put the top down in summertime and drive out to Rosebud, you will enjoy that drive. It is just beautiful. 636-388-8771, slaphappyhemp.com. If you do talk to John today, we'll get him in. And then let me give a shout out to my friends out at Kit's Speed Shop. He's another guy that reached out and said, Rob, we like what you do. We want to be supportive. So it is Kit's Speed Shop. He wrote out what he wants me to say. So I'm not as versed with his business, but I understand what he's doing. He says, Rob, Kit does antique and classic transmission work in Sedalia, Missouri in Hangar 5, and is well known for his vast expertise and knowledge when it comes to transmission repair. So he works on old cars. He sent me some pictures. I mean, it's clean as, kind of tell businesses sometimes, Isaiah, when they're clean as a whistle, you can kind of tell somebody's taking care of business. That's the way Kit's Speed Shop look. Kit's Speed Shop, Sedalia, Missouri, works on old cars, transmissions. You know the deal. There it is right there. Great picture, by the way. He also says if you are in planes, he says no classic car, maybe you own a plane. Kit is also a certified ANP and IA, which is everything airplane owners are on the lookout for. So that is our good friend out at Kit's Speed Shop. Kit's Speed Shop. Shout out to Kit's Speed Shop, where it's fun to go fast. You can reach them at 660-909-6000, 660-909-6000. Kit's Speed Shop. All right, Isaiah.
It is fun to go fast. I like that.
I got 2 advertisers I haven't even gotten in contact with. Do you think we can do 2 more? I mean, you got to figure out how to get these.
Probably not for ad reads like this, unless they're like unless they're like one time a week, similar to
I think what we're going to have to do is do something.
There's other ways we'll
do something on the website, because we can't even get Debbie. She sent me a text the other day. She said, Rob, on the post that you put out on your social media, you don't list me. And I said, we can't. We don't have enough room.
Yeah.
So we got to
figure out. We have 10 links on the Facebook things, and the 10 people that are already there pay us to be on there every day.
How grateful are we?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great place to be in. I never even knew that you could only have 10 links until we already had so many links from advertisers that we have this issue. It's a good problem to have, but I tried to.
People have been so good to us. It's almost, it's just been amazing. It's just so grateful to our advertisers. And, nobody knew what was going to happen, Isaiah. When you leave the radio station, you just don't know what's going to happen. But a lot of people put their faith into us. We really appreciate it. And
we just passed 100,000 views on Rumble on the show, just passed 100,000 views on YouTube on the show, hundreds of millions of views on X. So
X is where we get it. Yeah, because
Rumble, I mean, Rumble's good for us, over 100,000 as well. And we don't even post the short clips on Rumble. So that's just, the show.
How do we, very quickly before we roll, we'll just kind of have a conversation that we would normally have off air, but how do we get advertisers their love on Instagram? Is there a way to do that?
I mean, for us to promote for them, unless they have an Instagram account, probably not. But what we can do is make where you record a video and send it to them to promote on their profiles. If that makes sense.
An endorsement.
Yeah. Or just like, hey, I'm Robb Carter, the host of the Robb Carter Show. I love our sponsors. Deborah Genis with eXp Realty. Let me tell you why we selected her as our realtor for the Robb Carter Show. Talk about it, and we can send her that video, and then she can run that. She could put that out.
Gotcha.
She could also run it as an ad, with her advertising, right? But that's a great strategy to use, where they get to use your face and your recognition essentially, right? And then put it with their brand.
It's funny you say that, because this is one of the things I'm trying to get in my mind, right? So, but I commented this because what you get people to say when they're negative about you, they don't like what you have to say, right, Isaiah? I'm sure there are people that are not happy.
That's a good thing, though. When you have haters, you're doing something right.
100% agree. And then you have the people that, oh, you're just doing that for clicks. I said, first of all, I don't do anything for clicks. You think I'd be talking about Missouri state politics in a show that goes nationwide?
If we were doing this for clicks, we wouldn't have talked about this all day long.
This is a labor of love. We think we're trying to make a difference, right? That's why we're doing it. But when people say that, I'm like, do it for clicks. I said, we don't work on clicks. That's just not, we're something to do. We're small. If you look at my X feed, it's small business advocates. But I will say this, when you get clicks, right, and our profile expands and more people pay attention to what we have to say, whether they're for it or against it, but we're bringing conversation into their lives, right? We're giving them context on things that they may vote on, situations that they may not have enough information on. The bigger we get, the bigger our show gets, the more people that see us, the better it is for our advertisers, because when we endorse our advertisers, now they're attached to somebody they know, and all of a sudden it gives reach to your business. And that's ultimately what we want to do. I'll make this promise to the people that advertise with us. We're not raising prices ever. If we have 100 million people watching every day, I'm loyal to the people that jump on board with me, Isaiah.
Well, I'll say this, we won't raise it on the people that are currently with us. I would not. Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, the people that were on the ground floor of this, the people that reached out to me and said, Robb, we want to help you. I will be as loyal to you till the day I die. And some of the people don't even advertise with me anymore. I haven't forgotten about you. There are people that don't advertise with me that did it one time and helped me when it was crunch time for me. I don't forget those people either. I think about you every day. I think about ways to help your business. I do not forget people that jump on board with what we're doing. I just promise you, I don't forget. I always remember the people that are there for me, and I'm as loyal as they get. You'll find out that I'm very loyal, even to people, Isaiah, that aren't loyal to me. I'm still loyal to them, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. All right. That's all we got. I got to go have lunch with Rich McQuay at RAKCustomcoatings.com.
Last thing I'll say is John Grady said, what about an advertiser link tree? That's a great idea. We're actually working on an advertiser where we're just going to have a web page, but we'll work on that. And in the interim, what I want to do is, the show sponsors banner that's scrolling on the website. So I'm going to be working with Tom on that, where all of our current sponsors, when you go on the website to the RobbCarterShow.com, right there, you'll see the scrolling banner with their images. And I want to work on linking those images so that if you click on Jones Waters image there, if you click on Slap Happy Hemp, right, it'll take you to their website.
Oh, beautiful.
Trying to make everything easier for you. It's me and Robb, that's it. And then Tom, now we just hired him to do website and social media stuff. But he also is only a part-time person. He has many clients. John Grady is one of his clients.
For now.
For now, right? We might take him away from you, John.
Yep. Swallow him up.
But that's what's coming down the pike for all the advertisers is, one, we're going to have a dedicated landing page, but two, I want to work on highlighting the current advertisers on the homepage in some way. And that's a very common way to do it, is just have that scrolling sponsors banner on the website there. So just be on the lookout. Hopefully within the next month or two, we'll be able to get those up.
Deal. All right, brother. Go enjoy your day. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you tomorrow morning, as always, Thursday tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on the Robb Carter Show.